Commissioner Greg Weiss to do the, first, well, I'm going to ask Commissioner Greg Weiss to do the prayer, but first, we're going to have the roll call. Thanks, Greg.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Baxter?
Here.
Commissioner Bernard?
I'd nudge you.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marino?
Here.
Mayor Sachs?
Here.
Commissioner Weiss?
Here.
Commissioner Woodward?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please rise if you're able. Oh God, we give into your hands the business of this commission. Guide our new and unfinished tasks to completion. Also help us bring our unresolved problems to a fair and just resolution. Help us to make decisions that will benefit all our citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Thank you. All right.
These are yours. So these are yours, maybe these are.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to begin on the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, we have one add-on, and that's the Housing Initiative, a presentation for 1 North Lake Pahokee. That was a directive from the board from the last zoning meeting.
Very good. And do we have an adoption? We should just go ahead and adopt those, if we could.
Madam Mayor, I'll move adoption of the agenda as amended.
Very good. And we have a second from Commissioner Baxter. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously. Now we're going on to page 2, the regular agenda. We could. And for the clerk, let me see. And the controller, do we have a motion to receive and file?
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Very good. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And we have a second with Commissioner Weiss. All those for?
We have a card on that item.
Okay, before the vote, let's have the card read. Go right ahead, Commissioner Weiss.
Michelle DePotter.
Is that for, that may be 3AB?
It's for 3A. It says 3A.
We're on purchase. Hello.
Morning.
Good morning,
Ms.
Mayor.
Potter.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Administrator Baker, and Council. We're on purchasing right now? That's the item that we're on?
No, not quite yet. But we have your card.
I have a couple of items. So revisions to purchasing and then on the regular agenda. So I'm sorry.
All right.
We're on-
We're right now, we're on 3A. What we'll do is when we get to the point where you would like to speak, what part of the agenda would that be, Ms.
I wanted to speak on the revisions to the purchasing ordinance, and then I wanted to speak under the regular agenda item
That's 4A.
on 3B1 is what I have.
Okay, so this is going to be 4A.
Okay, we're going to rename your card to 4A.
That's fine.
Okay?
All right, so
All right.
when we get to those
You'll be here,
items,
we'll be just a few minutes.
I'll be here all day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We won't be all day.
All right.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Okay, I think we're about to take the vote on 3A1. We have a first and a second. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously. Now we're going on to 3B1, and that is the Office of Equal Business Opportunity. We have staff. Do we, and I know the staff recommends a motion to approve, would anybody like to hear, or do we need a report from staff on this issue? Commissioner Weiss? Let me get this. All right, would anybody else? I'm sorry.
A couple questions.
Okay. Commissioner Weiss, go right ahead for staff.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions. I was talking to somebody who had been part of our part of the OEBO program. And one of the things that they had mentioned to me, and I was going to actually ask for a meeting, but since you're here, I can just ask you today. The experience that they receive, as working as a subcontractor, they said that that doesn't apply then when they move into becoming a prime contractor, that experience is not, and I don't know if it's an OEBO issue or something you need to talk to procurement about. Is that something you can comment on? So they had said that their experience as a sub does not translate to when they become a prime.
I'm unsure as to what they mean by that. If I can get additional clarification, I can.
Okay, we'll follow up with you after the meeting and I can get a meeting directly. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Sorry, Mayor, I guess I didn't speak up loud enough. I was just going to ask for their presentation.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think we're ready for presentation. We look forward to it. And we also have with us your documentation here that we all have a copy of. Very good. All right, go ahead and proceed.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board of County Commissioners, County Administrator Baker. We're bringing before to you an item as requested by the board to align the current standards in terms of the size of business in line with what we believe to be updated and current, and also to allow individuals to, should I say, small businesses that were in the midst of a contract who may be removed as a result of them not being in alignment with the size requirement to remain on those contracts. So we've amended the current contract to that effect, and with that, we'll move forward with the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, Madam Administrator. The Office of Equal Business Opportunity, we shared with you our mission and our vision, and that is to foster the inclusion of local small businesses. And our vision is to be the most valuable resource and advocate on behalf of small businesses. Small businesses wishing, oh, where's the, I'm sorry. There we go. So small businesses wishing to participate in the county's contracting opportunities have to apply for a small business certification. The certification is 3 years, for up to 3 years.
Michelle DePont.
And the only, let me back up. It is granted for up to 3 years, except in accordance with the graduation and suspension provisions found in the ordinance, section 280.21. In response to the direction of the Board of County Commissioners on January 30th, the ordinance is being amended as follows. We are adjusting the size standards, the definition of size standards, to increase them from construction from 9 million to 13 million, professional services CCNA, which are our architects, engineers, surveyors, from 5 million to 7 million, goods from 5 million to 7 million, and professional services, non-CCNA, and other service from 4 million to 5.7 million. The additional amendment is in program administration, exceptions, and waivers, which is a request to permit small and minority women-owned business enterprises performing on contracts with minimum mandatory SBE goals to remain on contracts after the SBE graduates from the EBO program. We are here today for preliminary reading and permission to advertise for public hearing on March 12th. Our next steps would be for us to return for the public hearing to adopt the ordinance on March 12th, and we will then notify all graduates and expired firms of modifications to the size standards and program administration, exceptions and waivers upon filing with the Department of State. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And as I stated before, we have your documentation here with us. We have a question by Commissioner Baxter. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Quickly, where does this stand? When is it coming back to us as far as the study goes?
The disparity study?
Well, that and the study, the cost analysis study of what it could potentially, what the difference is with and without the program?
We have to meet with industry to have a discussion, and so we are planning those meetings with the various agencies to discuss it so that we can have some information to bring back to the board. But the final adoption will be on the 12th. We will send it to the state so that the ordinance can be entered into Municode so that we can move forward with the increase and including those businesses that will then graduate, so that once they graduate, they can continue to work on the contracts without disruption to the county department, and to the local small business.
We're discussing the final adoption of what we're seeing today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners? We're going to proceed to questions by the public. Commissioner Weiss, would you like to read the card?
Yes, Michelle DePotter, item 3B, this would be item 3B1.
Good morning again, everybody. Michelle DePotter, CEO of the
morning.
AGC 515 North Flagler, Suite 910, West Palm Beach. I want to thank the staff for their hard work on bringing this forward to you guys so quickly. I want to thank the commission for your unanimous direction to the staff at the last meeting, which will put us in line with the volume increase. I do want to clarify item number 2, which is removing SBEs off projects mid-project. We first brought this to the staff's attention in 2 meetings with the county back in November. And at the last meeting, I know that there was support for potentially making this retroactive to current projects which this is affecting currently right now. So I reviewed the testimony from that meeting last night, and I know it ended with the county attorney who agreed and understood your direction that perhaps it could be retroactive or grandfathered in. So I'm just here to see where we are on that. I know Commissioner Woodward, you had expressed some concerns. Commissioner Weiss, I think almost all of you. So, and Virginia, you as well. I think you had some concerns over that. So.
Very good. Thank you so much. If any commissioner, you still have some time, but if any commissioner wishes to give a statement at this time or question, otherwise we'll proceed forward. Very good.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I guess to the county attorney, how would we proceed if we wanted to make it retroactive?
For the second part of this amendment, specifically regarding the allowing graduating SPEs to remain on those contracts and not having to either have a waiver or having to be replaced, it would depend on what the status of the contract was. If the graduating firm, if that's pending, it's possible that we could look at a situation where, you know, we could have a firm that's graduating and a prime that's saying that they need to replace this firm and it's pending. They have not yet been replaced. It's possible that, you know, they could fall under this amendment. For firms that have graduated and have already been replaced, at this moment, it's hard for me to find an avenue for them to, because they have been replaced. There's a new contractual relationship between the prime contractor and a subcontractor. So I would need time to think on if there are any avenues to retroactively accommodate that firm that was replaced. But at this moment, it's hard for me to imagine that that's something that we could do.
Okay. So that means that if it's pending, then we could potentially make it retroactive. However, if they've already been replaced and you've signed a new contract with the new SPEs, then we have a legally binding contract. Is that
correct? And well, it's the county doesn't necessarily have a direct contract with the subcontractor, but the prime and the subcontractor do have a contractual relationship.
okay? You know, I would support, you know, making it retroactive to the ones who are pending, but I'd love to hear from our board to see if that's the way we would like to go.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Woodward and then Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would agree. I like the idea of, excuse me, protecting the ones that are pending. But if there's already been a replacement, I think we would be creating a lot more work to have a reversal of the replacement. So if that's already happened, then, you know, I guess it is what it is. But any that are current are in, when we do the ordinance, so would it also lock into whatever contracts are out? Because a lot of these contracts are multi-year. So would it protect the contract that's already in place? Maybe it's a year old, and in another year, the contractor could graduate, but they're in this contract now. So is it for anything that's working forward? Or-
Correct, yeah, that, any contract that is out now that may be multi-year, the ordinance would cover those contracts, the amendment.
And then the pending ones are the ones that we could,
Right, if there, and I'm not sure if there are any situations like that now, I'm just speculating if there might be situations where a firm is about to graduate, then I think we could accommodate those situations.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Weiss and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you. Yeah, I support what my colleagues have said in regards to the pending contracts and agree also with those that have already been replaced. It would seem like we're interfering, then we'd be interfering with an additional contract. So, yeah, support that.
Very good. Commissioner Baxter?
I was going to say I agree, supporting what everyone else has supported, but I did have a question for Michelle. Will this, by not trying to find another path forward with the contracts, does it hurt anybody that we would be unaware of?
I would ask the staff if there are pending contracts that this would affect.
Are
Is that
there
your question?
I guess that's,
That this is currently affecting? I mean, the teams have been selected, and through, through the process now, they've, perhaps have had to be removed. I mean, is there more than one contract that this would affect right now?
and I think that's a valid question, so if we could please answer, are there any pending contracts that this would affect?
I would need to go back and look and provide a response. I don't want to sit and opine without having the information, but we can certainly check to see who is at the threshold and bring that information back to the board.
Would you be able to receive that information before the end of today's workshop?
Please.
Could I just use my remaining
Sure,
time
go
just to
ahead.
clarify two questions so that
Sure,
I'm clear
absolutely.
and I can re-review this because
Sure.
I'd like to do that. So for any firm affected by this, assuming today's agenda item approval, what direction is advised between today's date and the second reading would be the first question. The second question would be, assuming second reading and ordinance, can an SBE immediately be retained and resume their engagement on the project if they haven't been replaced?
Okay.
I'm just looking for.
This is for staff. If it would be worthwhile for you to take a recess for the staff to take a recess on this, I know you're going to be here for a while, Ms. Potter, and then to be able to bring back responses after you've been able to study this, would that be, that way we can have these questions answered today?
So may I just clarify?
Oh, absolutely.
The question is the number of businesses on the threshold of graduation. That
No,
this-
hold on just one second.
That's not my question.
Okay.
Are there any projects out
That's
there
the commissioner's question.
that this currently affects as perhaps in the fall of 2023, currently that are going through this, where they've been asked to replace their SBE?
Restate your question, Michelle, I'm sorry.
Are there any projects currently that have started in years prior that have been asked in the last 6 months to replace their SBE because they met that threshold of volume that this would affect?
Since this is a workshop, this is going to be a work in progress. All right? So if you'd like, we can hold off on the rest of this, the staff report, and give you a little time to research it and come back before the end of the workshop. And that way, we would be able to have your answers
Appreciate
today.
that. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Okay? Very good. Okay. Are there any other issues here? Commissioner Baker?
Preliminary, you do need a motion on this one.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, Ms. Baker, you're recognized.
Just for clarification,
Sure.
because we need a base. We need to determine what contracts were entered into, and whether, and I like the 6 months period, because then we can go back 6 months to see what contracts have been issued, and whether or not the sub or prime is expiring because they're SMWBE and they got to be replaced. So if we can do that, I think that would make things cleaner and would allow us to tell you what's pending. Because if we go back multi-years, how
Right,
far
I
back do we
understand.
go?
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. Just so when you go back 6 months, you're looking at just contractors who may be pending graduation in the contract that, okay, making sure. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for staff at this time before they take a short recess and then come back when you're ready, and then we'll proceed to a vote at that time. Is that be okay with everybody? All right, very good. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you, Ms. Baker, for the clarification. I think that elucidates it a lot better. We're going to move on now to the workshop session. And if nobody has any objection, I'd like to reorder the agenda so that we begin with 4C, which is an overview of animal care and control, since we have some of their major staff here present. And that way we can move that along. Good morning. This is Stephanie, not Jennifer. And this is Ms. Steele. Good to see you both. We are going to, and Isami is here? Okay, very good. Take a seat and we can begin with a presentation by Isami. And I believe we all have, make sure we all have the documentation here in front of us.
Good morning,
Good
Mayor,
morning. Good
Vice
morning.
Mayor, and Commissioners. Isami Ayala, Assistant County Administrator and Director of Facilities Development and Operations. With me today is Eric McClellan from FDO Strategic Planning, Stephanie Shanaha, Director of Public Safety Department, and Dan Steele, Director of Animal Care and Control Services. This workshop item seeks to fulfill board direction received during the November 28, 2023 workshop meeting, where staff was directed to bring back for consideration by the board the proposed design for the Animal Care and Control Renewal Replacement Project before proceeding with any additional work. For general context, the current Animal Care and Control facility was designed in the late 1980s and opened for operations in 1992. At the time, it was a state-of-the-art facility, but now it lags behind current standards and best practices. The built space is approximately 42,000 square feet. It's located on an approximately 14-acre county-owned parcel. The roots of this project date back to 2006, when the board provided direction to expand the facility. Following said direction, in 2007-2008, staff conducted a programming study and concluded that improvements in the amount of about $12 million will be required. Said figure was a placeholder, as there was no program or basis of design, and the same did not include costs for continuity of operations. That amount was built into the county's 5-year capital improvement program. Then, as we know, the nationwide recession hit, and from 2008 to 2015, all project efforts were suspended. In 2016, as staff was drafting the recommended project list for inclusion to be funded by the infrastructure sales tax, the project cost estimate was revised to $21 million. As we know, voters approved the IST, and the project was funded at the recommended amount of $21 million. In 2018, the board received numerous requests from the public to address the matter of high temperatures recorded in the dog kennels and directed staff to evaluate options for providing air conditioning relief. Following board direction, staff returned in 2019 with 3 options for consideration by the board. The first option was the base level renewal replacement project as funded under the IST project plan at $21 million. The second option, entitled Upgrade Option 1, was the base level project plus 1 new kennel and the renovation of the 3 existing kennels for seasonal air conditioning at an estimated total cost of $26 million. And then the third option, entitled Upgrade Option 2, provided for the base level renewal replacement project plus 4 new air-conditioned kennels at an estimated total cost of $32 million. Depending on the option chosen, additional operational costs range from $187,000 to about $680,000 per year. Following presentation to the board, staff was directed to retain consultant services in order to perform a comparative study to assess all possible options, including construction of a new facility. Following board direction, then staff proceeded to procure services, and in July 2019, PGAL was retained to provide professional architectural engineering design, programming, permitting, and construction administration services for the project. It is important to note that PGAL included, as part of its team, Animal Arts, and that's a Colorado-based firm that specializes precisely in animal care facilities. And they also included Humane Network, a nonprofit organization that provides consulting services regarding animal welfare. Later that year, in October 2019, Wharton Smith was retained to provide construction management at risk services. Development of the comparative study proceeded in 2019. The design team, along with county staff, held multiple public meetings aimed towards gathering community input. General public meetings were held on July 24, 2019 and October 28, 2019, and were attended by different stakeholders, including volunteers. The project team also held 2 charrettes on September 24, 2019 and October 28, 2019, with industry experts listed on this slide. I'm not going to read the list. The results of the comparative study were presented to the board in May 2020. A thorough overview of the animal care and control operations at the time, along with the findings and recommendation of the comparative study, was provided to the board. This slide and the ones that will follow come directly from that May 2020 workshop presentation. The comparative study identified several issues at the facility: lack of isolation areas for sick animals, inadequate space for veterinary services, primary traffic flow through the clinic, which creates an operational problem, no dedicated space for public spay and neuter services, no separation between intake and adoptions, and the need to right-size the public reception, undersized storage areas, too many dogs housed in a single space, and lack of proper air conditioning in the kennel area, which comes with poor ventilation and non-permanent air conditioning. The comparative study also identified driving policies that should steer the design options for the facility. I will not read through them, but please note that the same were the basis for the 4 options for the design presented to the board back in 2020. Key findings of the comparative study included that the optimal base program of spaces required for the facility, taking into consideration current intakes and factoring future growth, needed to be roughly 2.4 times the existing facility square footage. That is, that the approximately 42,000 square feet of current space needs to grow to approximately 99,000 square feet. The comparative study also found that the areas of the facility must indeed include the clinic, the kennels, customer service, warehouse, and isolation areas. Lastly, all design options to be presented to the board had 3 main cost drivers: air conditioning all interior spaces, providing additional kennel space, and providing for continuity of operations. During the May 2020 workshop meeting, the board was presented with 4 design options, using the optimal program spaces as the baseline and ranging from a reduced scope to an entirely new construction. The associated costs for each of those options were thoroughly discussed, inclusive of all potential alternatives to deduct the air conditioning costs. All information considered at the time, staff was directed to pursue option number 3, which is a combined renovation and expansion. And it has reduced square footage due to some modifications to the office space. And we were also asked to retain fully air-conditioned kennels. When the board issued the direction back in 2020, the funding level for the project, as approved under the IST project plan, was $21 million. Therefore, funding for the selected option was not in place, and we were directed to come at a later time as part of the budgeting process to provide for the additional funding necessary and plan that additional funding in the outer years. We proceeded accordingly, and when the ISD program was re-estimated in January 2022, we included the additional funding by increasing the project budget to $48.3 million with an appropriation plan in fiscal year 25. At the time, design development had commenced, but was incomplete, has not been completed. In November 2023, we returned to the board with an update regarding capital projects and reported a budget shortfall for this project and others included as well. This one provided a revised cost of $69.5 million, which reflected the escalation and cost increases experienced from May 2020 and benefited at the time from having 100% completed design development drawings. To summarize, during the May 2020 workshop meeting, we were authorized to proceed with early design of option number 3, including fully air-conditioned kennels in order to address the needs as identified through the comparative study and which are once again listed on this slide. With this historical overview for context, we would like to provide the board a summary of the design as it currently stands. Let us start by sharing with you some of the renderings that we have shared before in the November workshop presentation, November 2023, and which we have reproduced on this slide. We have some limitations as staff as to the information we can present in a public meeting. I have shared that before. Under Florida statutes, drawings showing life safety are confidential, deemed confidential and exempt, right? So as we work through the different slides that we're going to be showing you, you will see that we have removed the information that will provide any insight as to the internal configuration and left only the layout of the buildings, right? But that layout reflects and comes from the design drawings that are 100% completed. In talking about those renderings, there are two things that we will like to highlight. I often say that FDO is the county's private developer, and I say that because we're required to comply with the same regulations that any other private developer will need to comply, including finishes and landscaping. As for the reception, the comparative study found that the area is not truly functional as it currently operates. So one of the things that our design team had to do was to improve that area to provide a better flow throughout. And that's what those renderings were meant to convey. With that for background, I will now transition to Eric, who will walk you through the extent of the current design. As I stated before, we have removed some information from the drawings just to make sure we remain compliant with statutory requirements. He will share the building outline, main operational areas. What you're going to see today, the approach we're following, is very similar to the approach we followed in May 2020 when we needed to be able to share some level of drawings without crossing over the confidentiality requirements. And with that said, the floor is yours, Eric.
Thank you, Esme. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Everybody loves a little show and tell. For ease of this presentation and for your review, I do want to note that the orientation of these drawings has north to the right, not to the top of the slide. So in this orientation, Belvedere Road would actually be to your right rather than at the top of the screen. But what this slide shows you is the entire project as currently designed. You have existing improvements that are shown in gray. Those are the existing buildings. You have light green applied to ancillary interior and site areas. You have new buildings reflected in the peach or tan color. New features with an exterior component are in blue or purple. Yellow is a new exterior covered pedestrian corridor connecting the campus, as well as some other roof coverings. And you have teal reflecting the existing exterior covered pedestrian corridor. Now, before I proceed, would anybody benefit from another review of that color coding or any additional time for review? I see a head shake. We do have annotations applied to the slides that follow, but let me go through that one more time. First, you have gray. Those are all of the existing buildings on the site. You have light green, which is ancillary areas, either interior to new buildings or on the site. You have new buildings that are either tan or peach, in color. New features with an exterior component are in either blue or purple. Yellow is a new exterior covered pedestrian corridor. And teal is the existing exterior pedestrian corridor. And again, we do have annotations on the slides that follow. But any questions, feel free to interrupt. So this slide identifies the 3 existing dog kennels that will be renovated and equipped with air conditioning by the project under the current board direction. Next, we have a slide reflecting 2 new air-conditioned dog kennels that are at the south end of the facility and delivering approximately 9,200 square feet of space. This provides capacity to renovate for growth and intake, and to address the current need for co-housing dogs in a single kennel, which is not an industry best practice. Here we bring your attention to a series of new outdoor dog isolation yards across the campus. This accomplishes needed separation, be it for behavioral or health reasons. This slide identifies a new 2,000 square foot barn for large animals and approximately 750 square feet of new pens for small farm and wild animals. Obviously, animal care and control is so much more than just dogs and cats. And these are critical spaces to meet community need as a last resort and for any pending cases.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? 750 square feet?
Correct.
For a barn? That will
Pens.
have pens?
New pens, like if you have, let's
I
say.
understand what a pen is, but is that covered?
Yes, that is covered.
And it is, did you say for what size animals? What are we
So
talking?
we had 2 different components that I mentioned. First is a barn, covered barn, individual stalls. Those would be for large animals.
And that's 750 square
That
feet?
is 2,000 square feet, and that replaces an existing barn at the facility.
Okay, so the 2,000 square foot would be a covered barn for large animals such as cattle or horses.
That is correct.
And 750 square feet is pens that are covered that are for smaller animals such as pigs and things of that size.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Very good questions. One thing you will note with these spaces, the barn and the pens, they are intentionally sited for separation from the main building operation to lessen any noise disturbance to these animals and to afford access to adjacent open lawn areas. Here we highlight new ancillary spaces that are critical to supporting and sustaining routine daily operations. This includes a central energy plant, or a CEP, to generate the supply of cool indoor air and as an efficient alternative to multiple individual units. Also included is a new warehouse of approximately 3,300 square feet for storage of food, bedding, and other supplies, along with a new sally port of approximately 2,500 square feet for animal deliveries by ACC personnel. Next, we have the renovation and 15,400 square foot expansion of the current main building interior. And key accomplishments will include improvement of veterinary and adoption spaces to modern standards, delivery of isolated spaces for housing sick animals, separation between intake and adoption areas for improved management of operations, reconfigured reception space to separate pedestrian traffic by the nature of their visit, and this will help improve safety, security, and the overall user experience, and creation of spaces that are dedicated to spay and neutering services. What makes all of this possible is the relocation of administration space to a second floor. This consists of approximately 12,000 square feet of space to house personnel offices, record storage, meeting, copy, and break areas, and other ancillary office functions and spaces. So with all of those details of the design development phase addressed, what is left to complete is the construction drawings, or CDs. The project team anticipates that being a 6-month effort in preparation for permitting, and funding already in place is more than adequate to cover that to completion. This workshop is the reason why design has not continued. Staff's intent was to issue PGAL with authorization to proceed in January to align with the appropriation of funding for construction that is coming in FY25. That authorization has been held in suspense pending this workshop to ensure we minimize the potential for any lost investment. And speaking of investment, a little over $1.5 million has been expended to date on the project planning, initial design efforts, and all of the related professional services delivered. There is an additional $21,190 that's encumbered or committed but is not yet spent. So now I'll turn the floor back to Isami for closure.
Thank you, Eric. This then brings us to the end of our presentation. Staff is requesting board direction if to continue with design of the project as previously directed and in alignment with the comparative study, or if to revisit the project, approach design as per new board direction to be provided. Should the board decide to instruct staff to continue to move forward, we would like to note that the budget shortfall of approximately $21 million was included in the funding plan that the Office of Financial Management and Budget presented to the board during the January 2024 workshop. As we have stated before, this is the current estimate. It is based on 100% design development drawings. Construction drawings have not been prepared. And as we have discussed before, final cost will be determined by the competitive public bidding to be conducted by the construction manager at risk. This concludes staff presentation, and we will gladly take any questions as this board deems it appropriate.
Very good. Thank you so much, Isami. Just say you have done an amazing job putting this together, and I appreciate your efforts on behalf of the county. Thank you. We have one card, and then I can open it up for any questions or comments by my colleagues. This is a workshop, and it's good to have participation by everybody. All right, Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. Thank you. Karen Luna Lampert.
Hi, good morning. Either one you want to. Right. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. A little nervous. So hi, yes, good morning. My name is Karen Lampert. I'm a resident of District 4 in Delray Beach. I'm also a volunteer and adoption counselor at Animal Care and Control, Palm Beach Animal Care and Control. And I'm here today to ask you for your support in approving the advancement of the renewal and replacement project for the shelter. As you all know, the shelter is overcrowded, understaffed, and does not currently have enough space to properly house our animals and especially our dogs. The proposed additional kennels and redesign of the existing building will greatly help our efforts to provide the care these innocent animals need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Karen? All right. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for your
all your help.
volunteers. Very good. All right. Commissioner Weiss, is that your light on?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. I recognize you, and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank you for the presentation. You all do an excellent job in providing a lot of details, and so very much appreciate that. I think, this has been going on for, by the time this thing gets built, it'll be 20 years. This project has been being developed. I think at the last round of development that you all went out to and received direction or assistance from experts in the field, and that they have identified all of, I don't want to say deficiencies, but areas that probably were missed in the past and have identified the needs. I see no reason why at this point that we don't move forward with this, so I 100% support that we move this project forward. The funding is in place. It's been identified. The need is certainly there. If you've ever been out to AC and ACC, while the people are wonderful that work out there, the volunteers are wonderful, the conditions are terrible, both for the people working out there and, I shouldn't say terrible, they're not up to the kind of standards that we expect in Palm Beach County. So I 100% support this. As my fellow board members, I don't know where your heads are at on this, but to really look hard and say, we just need to move this thing forward and as they like to say, get her done.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Commissioner Baxter.
I'm just going to ditto what Commissioner Weiss said and get her done. But I just wanted to thank you and say what an amazing facility structure. It looks like it will be great for everyone involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor, and I definitely agree with my fellow commissioners. Thank you for in your private presentation with me, really going through the history of this and helping me understand the continuity of direction as boards change over time, and you've had to kind of pivot, and the work has been done, the design is there. I fully support this. I think that we should move it forward, and I look forward to some groundbreaking or whatever we do in the future to celebrate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodward. I'd like to just say a few words if there's no other commissioners who'd like to speak about it. I'd like to thank Jan Steele for all that you do there. You do a lot with very little resources, all the resources that we have been able to give you up to now. And I think that you have done a tremendous job in taking care of our animals, whether they're little kitty cats or big horses. You've seen them all, and you've done a wonderful job with them. And also you, Stephanie, for looking over all of this. We've had a number of meetings, I have, with my staff and the staff with Parks and Public Safety, as well as Ms. Steele, and Isami was there. Todd Von Laren was there, and we've been out to Animal Care and Control a couple of times, and we met with Luna out there and the volunteers. And I've done a little bit of research about this because what concerned me is the years that have gone by since we did any plans or design on this facility. And with the way we are growing here in Palm Beach County, after and post-COVID, more and more people have animals, more and more people are giving their animals up, but then more and more people need service animals. So my research has revealed this. We have 41,000 square feet right now, according to our study. We need 90,000 square feet. We cannot adopt our way out of continued euthanasia of our animals. Let me repeat that. We cannot adopt or foster our way out of continued euthanasia of animals. So what is the answer? The answer is to use our assets to the benefit of the community. The benefit of the community is service animals. We need service animals, mostly dogs. We need service animals. Where do we need service animals? We need service animals in our veterans organizations. Right now, and I'm going to mention Semper Fi, we gave him a proclamation here in the County Commission for his work, this Marine's work, treating PTSD with our animals. Right here, Palm Beach County animals were used to be trained and then used for veterans. Our prisons have been using service animals, our animals, from Animal Care and Control for work with inmates here, Palm Beach County. Our Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office will be using our Palm Beach County animals for their service animals. The same thing with our schools, the same thing with our disabled, the blind and the developmentally delayed need service, they need service animals. The cost of a service animal is insurmountable. But if we can use our assets, which are our animals, mostly dogs, to be used for service animals, it'd be a tremendous thing. So I would like to talk to the board, get your ideas on this, because this is a workshop, to take this facility and transfer it to an agricultural area. If anything, animals should be used, should be housed, should be served, should be trained, not in an industrial area. Now, this area has been here. We've had this facility here on Belvedere since 1980s. We're now 2024. I'd like to entertain the idea of looking into the idea of transferring Animal Care and Control into a larger area that is agricultural, that can be more appropriate for for housing animals, but especially for training animals for service. Right now, we just don't have the space. Like I said, it's from 41,000 square feet. We are going to be constructing areas for 99,000 square feet. We are trying to do too much in a small area that is now an industrial zone. So what are we going to do if we go along with option 3? I know it's upsetting to some people to have change, but we've changed in this county. We have more people, we have more animals to house. We're going to have more horses, we're going to have more cattle. We're in an industrial area today. This was planned back and before COVID, and now we're just busting out of our seams. So we need to look at what we can do for the animals that we have today and all the animals that we're going to have in the future. Okay, so if we look at option 3, we're looking at not doing the very best that we can for the animals. What we're looking at is we're going to have below industry standards, and I'm referring to page 11 of our review from Animal Care and Control staff. We will be below industry standards for Palm Beach County. I think we can do better. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. I've been in touch with other animal rescue places, but also those shelters that are not just rescue, but they have to euthanize as well. And they all have enough space to be able to train dogs for service, to be service animals. So if we don't give staff direction to at least review, I'm not saying to do it completely today, but at least review the areas that we can expand on and agricultural areas that are county-owned, like we own our small facility today, I think we might be able to come up with a more cost-effective. And when we talk about cost-effective, we're going to be spending close to $50 million just on retooling this particular facility. We're going to need to spend an additional $4 to $5 million to purchase contiguous land so that we have a staging area for the developer. Well, think about it. If we're so constricted with land that we need to buy additional land in order for the developer to stage the reconstruction of this facility, are we doing the best for the monies that we have? I don't think so. And I think the only way to do this is to look at what other possibilities there are out there. We're in a constricted land use in a very small industrial area where we have to buy additional land. By the way, the soil is contaminated on the land that we need to buy just for a staging area. So rather than try to retool a facility that's been there since the 1980s, I'd like to open our eyes to the possibility of using agricultural land that would be better suited for the animals. This is about animals, folks. Animals should be in an agricultural area, not stuck in an industrial area. Maybe it wasn't industrial in the 1980s, but it's certainly industrial today. So I'd like to just open this up for information and for conversation, because one of the requests for direction is to revisit the project design and approach. And I'd like to see not us cut it down to option 3, which almost cheapens it, but to open our eyes to a possibility of being able to put animals care and control in an area where there's animals, rather than a tight industrial area. So I see a couple of lights here. We're going to go ahead and start the discussion. This is a workshop. Go right ahead. You're recognized. Your light was on first. Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't more forcefully disagree with you on this matter. The animals that Animal Care and Control, the majority of the animals are with people. And our population is not in the agricultural areas. Our population lives in the more urbanized areas. That's number one. The extra land that was proposed to be purchased, that we gave direction to try and purchase, was not done specifically to use as staging. It was done specifically because it became available and it is adjacent to that property, and there were benefits to be found in having that property available to us, one of which was to be able to stage from there. But the other options for that land are also additional areas for housing animals. To continue to have the animals suffer like they suffer without having a new facility, to me, is unconscionable. Absolutely unconscionable. We know what the conditions are today. We know that people are forced in together where animals are being surrendered, sometimes under very difficult situations, potentially being euthanized as well. And then people are coming in to try and adopt animals. Mixing those two things together for any longer is a disservice. The idea to relocate this facility somewhere else, it's centrally located. You're off of Southern, right between the Turnpike and I-95. There isn't a better place that you can put this to make it accessible centrally. We also are on the process of building a new facility out in the western part of the county that was approved a few years ago. So there is a facility underway for that. As to your wish to want to train dogs, I think that's a wonderful thing, but I think that's done by our private partners. They've got tremendous programs. I know we were involved with helping train service dogs for the disabled with lots of different disabilities. My wife served on their board for a number of years, and there are wonderful programs in our county to help accomplish that. And if Animal Care and Control can partner with somebody and provide space, that would be something fine to do. But I am not going to sit here today and allow this thing to be put off any longer. It's time to move this forward. It's time to get this done. And let's just, we have a great plan. I disagree with you that it is not up to standards. It is. The dogs are going to be individually housed. Today, we have dogs being housed together, which is not standard. What's being proposed is going to provide for the ability to provide neutering services, which are not available easily in that facility today. They have to make makeshift rooms available that are not surgical rooms to be able to do the TVNRs. And we need that as quickly as possible. More animals are being born in this community than we have the ability to support, and we need to stop that by having the low-cost or free ability to provide neutering services so that they don't continue to reproduce. But I cannot sit here today and support putting this off any longer, and I ask the board to please consider this and please support moving this forward.
Thank you. And if I may respond to those respectfully, Commissioner Weiss. First of all, option 3 does not provide for individual housing of the animals. It, according to, let me just, excuse me, Mr. White, we'll get, just hold on just one second. Pursuant to page 11, option 3 will have co-housing, and that is what we're faced with. Number 2, and I'll give you an opportunity to respond. Number 2, this is in a tight industrial zone. It is, we can't expand anymore unless we buy the contaminated soil acreage, which is right next to our facility. And I don't see any downside to putting animals in an agricultural area where they're not in cages inside of a building, but they may be able to be housed in areas that are more adapted to animals. And also with regard to the delay, if there's going to be any delay further, Isami and I have discussed this at great length and great depth. All I'm asking is us to look at it. We can use and with regard to change, and I know you're a great lover of animals, Commissioner Weiss, and I appreciate that. I think we all are. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't like animals. But I don't, but the design is perfect, and the design will stay the same. The design will provide for separation of those who come to drop off animals, whether they're sick or healthy, and a separation of those who come to adopt animals. That design will absolutely stay the same. And then with regard to the training, unfortunately, a lot of veterans organizations just don't have the money to have private training centers. I've discussed this with 6 different veterans, American veterans organizations. And what they do, and 2 of them are there right now. We have entered into a contract that was worked on with our county attorney's office that people from a veterans organization could come, use one of our dogs, train them right there, and then return the dog to the kennel that we provide, the cage, and then be able to use whatever land we have, and we certainly don't have a lot of land there, to be able to train the animals. So I'm just asking us, take a look at it. And I don't think there would be any long delay. My God, this thing has been going on since the 1990s. But I think it's time for us to take a look at expanding this facility to an area that would be more adaptable. And I'm certainly going to give you an opportunity to speak again. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Excuse me. You asked a specific question. I'd like to get that answer.
Oh, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Staff, can you please just respond to this issue about whether or not this meets standards and not co-housing dogs?
Yes, certainly, happy to. First thing I would like to clarify is that the slide, as we stated during the presentation, the slide that is included on page 11, slide number 11, came from the May 2020 presentation, and that's important. At that time, we presented to the board that option number 3, which, by the way, is the option staff recommended as well, and the consultants recommended, had 2 things used to reduce a little bit the square footage. Number 1, there were some offices that were reduced, and number 2, it provided the ability to do co-housing if needed, but we added kennels for single housing. And I would like to transition to Stephanie and Jan for a little bit, because I know they handle the co-housing topic significantly better than I do.
Thank you, Isami. So as it relates to co-housing, obviously the reduced scope, which was option 3, was considered because option 1, which was an additional kennel, was significantly more. So the reduced scope included not having that additional kennel. And we've learned a lot over the last few years that there's going to be growth in Palm Beach County. And we have also learned that, it's important that we provide, safety resources for our staff that are working in the kennels. So what we've done is we've kind of looked a different angle at this, and we're working now more with the community to reduce the number of animals that are coming into our shelter. We realize that this is not a Palm Beach County government problem, it's more of a community problem. We'll be coming back to the board in a few years, or hopefully within the next year, to provide some changes to our ordinance to put more restrictions on the number of animals that are coming into Palm Beach County. Because we cannot continue, if you build it, they will come. I think that the plan that we have in place with the number of kennels that we do have additional space for the number of animals that will be coming in, but we can't continue to build more and more kennels to house these animals. It needs to start with the community to prevent those animals from coming into our shelter. So the plan is moving forward to house the animals, one dog per kennel. And we will co-house them if needed, usually the smaller dogs or if they come in as pairs. But we will not, moving forward, co-house dogs, double them up within every kennel.
So to translate that into the design, which is what we conveyed in May 2020, the design included, it still remains, additional kennel space with the flexibility that animal care and control staff needed to be able to run operations as a function of their needs. And that's why in May 2020, we came to the board saying, out of the 4 options, our experts, the consultants and staff are recommending option number 3, which is the one that eventually got approved.
Do you have anything further right now, Commissioner Weiss? No? Okay, good. Commissioner Baxter then.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple questions. I do love the idea of more service animals, so questions, are there anything, I mean, without having already spoken to the sheriff or Veteran Services, that prevents them from going to adopt the dogs or use them for services or training? And I wanted to ask the mayor, are you wanting them to have accessibility for the service animals, or are you wanting us to provide training? I'm trying to clarify what it is.
No, thank you for
want.
that question. What I'm looking at is this. We're growing, we need more space. We can't have any more space in the facility that we have. So when it comes to what can we do with animals, we cannot adopt our way out of euthanasia. We have too many dogs, and let me just focus on dogs and not, and cats as well. We cannot adopt out more so that we're going to have to continue euthanasia. So what can we do? What everybody in the whole country is doing is they're using the dogs and the cats as service animals. It's real simple. Service animals. And so that good question that you have is, do we pay for the training or do other places pay for the training? We are not dog trainers, okay? Animal care and control rescues animals that nobody wants. So the organizations that I mentioned before, there are 6 veteran organizations that train animals for their veterans. They do the training, they're professionals. Same thing with the sheriff's office. The sheriff has service animals, they have professionals to train. What I would like, we don't have the space to have, what do they call them, Ms. Steele? Pen dogs or play yards. Yeah, but there's certain different classifications of dogs that can go out in certain areas. We don't have enough space. We don't have enough space. So what I'm saying is, let's look at, I'm not saying just deny this whole thing. Let's look at the possibility of finding land where we have a little more land and we can have these professional trainers train our animals, Palm Beach County animals, most of whom are large animals who would be put down, be euthanized. And then use those animals for service animals, for the developmentally delayed, the blind, veterans, hospitals, schools, all these different areas that we could use these large, especially large dogs for, and it would be a plus for everybody. And I'm just asking, let's just look at it. I have been assured that there would not be a serious delay because we can use the same design, but just more land, more space. And I know that if we go from 41,000 to 90,000 square footage, we are going to be really even more crowded and more intense than we are today. So that is just my recommendation.
Mayor, may I follow up?
Sure, you go right ahead.
So I support giving access to these veteran programs to what is going on. I would hate, because to somebody's point earlier, I believe it was Commissioner Weiss who said that we've been at this for 20 years. I hate being the person to delay it longer, but to the mayor's point, especially with larger animals, and I started to think horses next to highways and things, I don't think it's unreasonable to proceed with the building, but maybe also explore some land and some agricultural areas for maybe the agricultural animals, the horsing, the pigs, any sort of those, thinking of this expansion and potentially pushing them closer to something. Some horses can be skittish, some, different animals, different issues, and they're outside. So I do find some relevance in that, but I really hate to delay a building that really needs to progress forward. So if we could find some sort of compromise, look for maybe something where it is more agriculturally based for our outside animals, I could support that. So thank you.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the co-housing, that was a concern of mine when I had my meeting, and it was explained that it's not the plan to co-house, but we have the flexibility if we need it. If there's cases of emergency, with the other plan, you could not co-house. With this one, we can if we need to. If there's a high intake for whatever reason, if there's a hurricane, sometimes I know you get an influx of animals in that case, and we want to protect as many as we can. So we have the ability to do that with this plan. I did like that. But the first thing I think we need to maybe answer for ourselves is, what is the purpose of animal care and control? And for myself, it seems, like we're kind of the front lines of animal rescue. I mean, any dog that comes to us, or cat or animal, whatever the animal is, it comes to us, we will take care of it, we will treat it, assess it, can we rehabilitate it, get it back to health, can we adopt it? That's what our goal is. And if it's strengthening our partnerships with the nonprofits, I think that's the way to go with this, because we have a number of wonderful animal rescues in our county. I know they do great work, but we're at the front lines. Like, we take the worst cases, or however it comes to us, we take those animals. And delaying, this started in 2019, and we have this Animal Arts and Humane Network who were part of this design, and multiple partners in all of this. We have the land right now. I understand what you're saying, but we don't have a space of land identified. So even trying to plan any of this right now, we have the land, we have the design, we have $1.5 million already put into this process. We're ready to go. I don't support delaying this at all. I think that we need to move forward. I appreciate your concerns, and as Commissioner Baxter brought up, maybe there is a space somewhere for the farm animals that animal rescue does take in, and that's a separate issue that we could look at. But at this point, we don't need to move forward. This particular plan has been 5 years in the making, and I don't want to delay at all. I want to move this forward because animals are continuing to come, and there's ordinances that we need to talk about. There's a few other policy changes maybe we can make as a board. We just did Countdown to Zero. There's a number of things that we can do, and it's not like a one-size-fits-all, but I think we need to focus on the actual purpose of being the front line of animal rescue, and then really partnering with our nonprofits throughout the county and even in other counties, as we can, to finish the goal of getting these animals into a permanent home. And sometimes we're able to do that, but a lot of times they're a little better at that process than we are, but we're really good at taking the animals in the most need, and I don't want to delay this at all.
I appreciate it so much. Since I brought it up, and then I'll recognize Commissioner Bernard, I don't see any delay, because I want to go forward with the plan that we have spent money on already. I would like for us to look forward, to give you direction, to look at being able to expand. We have county land already identified. I didn't want to bring it up at this time, but we do have county land available that would be appropriate for the large animals and for an area where the smaller animals can be trained, not by us, but by professionals, to be used as service animals. These are Palm Beach County dogs. I'd like to see Palm Beach County dogs used for Palm Beach County needs. We have a tremendous need in this county with our veterans, with our hospitals, with our children. We have these dogs. They're big dogs. They're square-faced dogs. And they're the ones that are most appropriate to be used as service animals for our veterans, for our sheriff's office, but we don't have the space there. So what I would like to do, continue with this, is somebody's put a lot of work into this. We have put a lot of money into this. Let's move forward with this revision on option 3. And in the meantime, I'd like to give staff direction to look at this available land that's already been identified to possibly house those large animals, and possibly a training area where we can not euthanize the big dogs, but use them as service animals for the people of Palm Beach County. And that, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I supported option 3, and, you know, I want us to move forward and to move as is, and because we're, you know, it's 100%, site plan has already been done by 100%. So, you know, I support, you know, looking at other land, but I know for me, I wouldn't want to change anything to this site plan that will delay, you know, our goals of addressing this need. You know, what I would love for us to be able to do is, with Ms. Baker, is as we're making decisions, when the site plan's 100% approved, you know, working with FDO and the budget department is to really figure out how the best way for us to get these projects built, because costs are going up and we need to get them built ASAP. And the longer we delay, the more it's going to cost us in the future. Thank you.
Commissioner Marino, Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. Excuse me. This is not the time to change our course. I support the rest of our commissioners in that aspect. There's no argument about training service animals, but we do have 4 acres additionally that will be coming to us, and they will be remediated. So anytime we take land that has been contaminated, it is going to be remediated before we use it. So if we need expansion, we have 4 additional acres for that. If we need training, we have 4 additional acres for that. Our larger animals have been on this property now for 20 years. Okay, so the acclimation of the animals in the area has already taken place. So I believe that we should go forward with where we are now. I don't believe we should be changing the course. I don't think we should give board direction to find another place to do this. And, you know, we are also fiscally constrained. If we start trying to find another place to do additional services, we need to focus on the services that we have and that we're offering right now and make them the best that we can, and we need to do that as quickly as possible. So I would be in favor of moving this forward today, and if we need a motion for that, I'm happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Your goals are laudable. I think hearing from the rest of the board that the majority of the board wants to move this forward as is today. I have no issue if you want to go out and work on finding additional land somewhere else for large animals, although, you know, I think there's potentially facilities here to deal with large animals, but if there's a need for additional space for large animals and that's something you want to work on, I think that would be great, and you can bring that back to us, and if there's a way to fund it or something, I think that would be fine. But I think it's been clear now, the majority of this board wants to move this forward today.
Thank you so much to my colleagues. I think this has been a healthy discussion. There's no delay. Isami, no delay. We need to do this quickly and as expeditiously now. I would like, and I will continue, to work with the volunteers at Animal Care and Control. I know they're watching, because I do know that we don't have enough land where we're at today to really facilitate the exercise of the dogs that we have, or clean facilities enough for the cats. I don't know if we have any horses yet. Do we, Ms. Steele? Do we have a horse or two there?
We don't have any horses right now, but we do usually have 4 to 6 a year.
Okay, so, and then I'll continue to talk about, and thank you, Commissioner Weiss, for bringing that. I will continue to talk about, and Commissioner Baxter, so that we can possibly expand into land that the county owns in agricultural areas for those large animals. And maybe one day, we can have a public-private partnership that will provide for service animals our animals who would be euthanized. We already have our animals to be euthanized would not be euthanized, but be used to help the blind, our veterans, our inmates, and our folks in the hospitals and schools. And so we will work together on that. But in the meantime, I think the board is very clear. It's confirmed we're moving forward. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think that takes care of that one. So let's move on with the workshop.
Thank you for the direction provided. May I ask which item should I take next? Because it was reordered. Should I go?
Oh, no,
to-
we're going back. We're going right back on the schedule. It's me. We're going to workshop A,
Purchasing.
revisions to the purchasing ordinance.
See you in a bit. May I have that? Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, folks.
We're set? Okay, perfect.
Staff is in place?
Yes, we are.
Okay, we are ready to proceed. Go
So-
right ahead and be recognized, Isami.
Good morning
Do you need
again.
any water out there? You've got
right
yours. Folks, ladies, you're okay?
We're good.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Go right ahead.
Isami Ayala again. I'm joined this time by Melody Telwell, Director of the Purchasing Department, as well as Ann Helfen from the County Attorney's Office. This workshop item intends to provide an overview of proposed revisions to the purchasing code. Little bit of context, which is always important. The county's purchasing code is the core document that, amongst other matters, provides the authority for the purchasing director to procure goods and services, and for the construction department directors to procure construction-related services. Therefore, it is without doubt a most relevant document as it relates to daily county operations. The current purchasing code was enacted in 2015 by means of Ordinance 2015-004, which in turn repealed and replaced Ordinance 2005-062. The current code has not undergone a comprehensive revision. In 2018, it was revised to incorporate the necessary references to the then recently adopted Equal Business Opportunity Ordinance. Although the current code was enacted in 2015, a close reading of the same reveals that many of its core concepts originate in the 2005 version. Therefore, depending on the topic at hand, we might be talking about an almost 10-year-old document or a 20-year-old document. Approximately 5 years ago, staff started working on revisions to the code. The proposed revised ordinance, which is included as attachment 2 to the workshop item, reflects historical lessons learned and input gathered from all county departments. Before proceeding with the presentation, please allow us to address some logistical matters. This topic, by definition, is a little bit convoluted or complex and extensive in nature. In an attempt to most effectively share the information, we have organized the presentation so that for each section of the ordinance, we're addressing 3 main topics: clarifications, additions, and deletions. You will hear us repeat quite often that we have clarified a given subject. And that is because one of our main goals in proposing revisions to the code was to improve the overall read and flow of the document. Melody and I will be taking turns in presenting the information in hopes that it will provide for a more engaging way of sharing ideas. With that said, let's begin. In the general section of the code, we're recommending adding language to allow the code to be referred to as either the purchasing code or the procurement code. This addition seeks to recognize current industry practices, as purchasing is kind of a legacy word, while avoiding the pitfall of unnecessarily creating the additional administrative work that will result from having to update numerous county procedures to reflect a name change. We have clarified the language to state that county departments must only request procurements that are fully budgeted and appropriated by the board. This is not new. We're just proposing revisions aimed to providing added clarity. We have added language to clarify that the code does not apply to procurements governed by the Property and Real Estate Ordinance. Under the current code, the PREM ordinance, as it is known, is listed as an exemption. We believe it is a better procedural approach to state that the code does not apply to the PREM ordinance. Lastly, in this section, we have added language to indicate that the generally accepted principles of public procurement are to be adopted and implemented. In this section regarding exemptions, we have clarified that agreements with non-for-profits or government entities that are exempt from the code are still subject to the PREM ordinance, that we have clarified the nature of the exemption for subscriptions and copyright material. We have stated and clarified that exemptions for training, events, conferences, summits, conventions, or programs of said nature is subject to the approval of the purchasing director. We have clarified that recreational uses include sports league management and the type of legal services that are exempted. We have clarified as well that sponsorships are exempt but subject to county procedures, that the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act is one of the exemptions of the code, that the purchasing director must approve department's PPMs, the Policy and Procedures Memoranda, on exempt purchases, and that exempt purchases above the mandatory bid amount must be approved by the purchasing director or the board as applicable. We share at the beginning of this presentation that one of our main goals in proposing revisions to the code was to reach a final document with an improved read and flow. Attainment of said goal often entailed reassessing the overall organization and resulted in moving between sections different concepts. And decentralized purchase order is the first example of such an instance. This concept is currently under the exemptions section of the code. We are proposing that it be moved to the alternate source selection section. We're recommending as well that several exemptions be added, and this is based on lessons learned. Grant-funded payments under the federal micro-purchase limit, pilot programs for fuel and energy, pharmaceutical and medical supplies to be administered by county departments, and enhancements to proprietary software. Lastly, we are recommending 3 existing exemptions to be deleted. Procurement for constitutional officers, as the constitutional officers conduct their own procurements. Procurements under the PREM ordinance, because as discussed a few slides ago, we're recommending a statement in the general section of the ordinance specifying that the code does not apply to procurements under the PREM ordinance, and concessions at airport facilities for 2 reasons. First, concessions will fall under the PREM ordinance, and second, all airport matters are heavily regulated by federal requirements. Melody?
I think I'm on now. Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Isame. In this section regarding definitions, we have clarified purchase orders to list the types used by the county, requests for information to clarify its purpose as a non-binding, non-competitive process. We've clarified requests for proposals for conciseness. We've clarified also requests for quote to indicate that price is the determining factor. We have clarified the resource manager to state it is a joint responsibility and added training requirements. We've clarified construction and the authority of the procurement director to refer construction-related requests for procurement to the construction department. Next slide. We've clarified invitation to bid to indicate that price is the determining factor. We have clarified responsive bid, quote, submittal, or response for conciseness. And we've clarified services to indicate that construction is a type of service. We have also added the following terms, 2 of which are new to the ordinance: invitation to negotiate and P-card, which is purchasing card. And we will discuss those terms shortly. These are the terms that we have added: centralized purchase order, cone of silence, consultant, contractor, supplier, and vendor. Contract notice, purchase orders. We continue to have added these terms: contract renewal, contract review committee, direct special payable purchase order, SPO, an exempt purchase order, EPO, exempt purchase, invitation to negotiate, notice of award recommendation, P-card, procurement, and utility services. As mentioned, an invitation to negotiate, or an ITN, is an example of a formal solicitation for goods and services, which is similar to requests for proposals and RFP. The ITN allows the selection committee members to initiate negotiations with the two highest-ranked firms, come back to the selection committee to discuss the results, and to make a recommendation of award to the BCC. Adding this formal process provides the county with an additional tool for solicitations. Currently, the county has a P-card or a purchasing card program primarily used for travel services. Here, by adding the definition and program details, the county may be able to expand the P-card program for goods and services, allowing for additional savings and/or rebates to be captured. Throughout this presentation, all the items that we've discussed are important, but there are a few items that are highlighted in yellow for added importance. The following revised definitions have been highlighted in yellow. This is our first instance. Decentralized purchase order. We are looking to raise the amount from $5,000 to $10,000. Mandatory bid amount or proposal amount, to raise the amount from $100,000 to $150,000. And we have deleted the following unused terms: Glades Business, Inspector General Fee, Living Wage Ordinance, MWBE, Professional Services, and Vendor. Now I'll turn it back to Isame.
Thank you, Melody. In the organization section, we're proposing language to clarify the duties of the purchasing director to include records management, vendor onboarding, P-card program, establishing training and certification standards, and assisting departments with contract administration. This is not new. This is what Melody already does. We're just proposing more definite language. We're proposing as well language that clarifies the authority of the construction departments to follow statutory provisions regarding construction contracts and to establish the necessary procedures for procurement of the same. Again, not new. All 5 construction departments already do this. We're just clarifying the language for the practice to be clearly codified. And then, in the organization section, we have added language to state that the procurement department will conduct vendor onboarding, record management, and manage the P-card program, and to state the authority of the director of procurement and the construction department directors to terminate contracts, exempt included, of any amount for or without clause. Again, not a new item. Our contracts currently do have a termination for convenience clause. We're just, again, making sure that it's stated in black and white. As Melody shared before, everything we have included in this presentation are matters that we deem to be most important. However, there are some at the top of that list, and those we have highlighted in yellow. Here's another one of such instances. Staff is recommending that the authority of the purchasing department director and the construction department directors be increased from its current $200,000 to $300,000. If this were to be approved, it will mean that the board will no longer see for approval contracts that it currently sees in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. The board will continue to see them as a receive and file item, but after the same have been approved by one of the 6 department heads previously mentioned. During our outreach efforts, we were repeatedly asked or questioned as to how this recommended of $300,000 was determined. Our analysis to reach this recommendation had 3 different components, and I'm going to walk you through them. First, you may recall that at the beginning of the presentation, we shared that depending on the topic at hand, the current code dates back to 2015 or 2005. Well, the signature authority threshold is rooted in that 2005 version of the code. And if we apply the engineering news record building index cost to the $200,000 in 2005, it translates into approximately $370,000 in 2023. We chose the ENR index for consistency, given that it is used as well in the Florida statutes when addressing construction-related matters. But any other cost index, such as consumer price index, could have been used and most probably will have led to a similar result. Regardless of the index, we believe that everyone can agree that the purchasing power that $200,000 carried in 2005 is not the same that it carries nowadays. Therefore, an increase in the authority thresholds appears to be warranted if the underlying intent of the code is to remain unchanged. Second, using fiscal year 22 as the basis and assuming the same to be a representative year for county operations, we analyzed every single item that came to the board for approval, be it goods and services or construction related. That analysis showed that if signature authority increases to $300,000, approximately 30%, and it's an average, 25 to 30%, of the items will remain at the department head level. This in turn can result in more expeditious processing. And third, we look at our peers. As of March of last year, when we were conducting the analysis, we look at select counties and had the following thresholds for board approval. Anything over $100,000 for Lee County, $250,000 for Pinellas, $100,000 for Orange County, $250,000 for Hillsborough, $500,000 for Broward, and then $1 million for Miami-Dade County. Therefore, our current $200,000 falls along the median of said distribution. In closing on this topic, this is certainly a policy decision at its core, and it will require the board to balance the type of documents it wants to retain under its approval authority and those, if any, that is willing to delegate to the 6 department heads previously mentioned. Melody?
Thank you, Isame. Now we jump to the source selection section. We have continued to clarify language regarding the BCC's ability to renew contracts procured through competitive bidding or alternative source selection. We've clarified language regarding late or incorrectly delivered bids being deemed non-responsive. We've clarified the term bid opening as well as the language for bid cancellation. And we've added the following to the source selection. Language to clarify the authority of the construction department directors to make monetary and time changes to construction contracts in accordance with county policies and procedures. We've added a section to address termination of contracts. Again, Isame addressed this already. We've added invitation to negotiate as a formal competitive proposal process, DPO as an alternative source selection, and the requirement to post a notice of intent to designate a sole source. Currently, the county possesses a sole source request by processing and receiving documentation between the identified quote-unquote sole source vendor. Here we're proposing what we call a belt and suspender approach, whereby we will post the same sole source documentation as a notice of intent to designate a sole source on the county's website, but also asking firms to respond if they too provide these services. The posting provides additional transparency in the process. And we've also added the simplification for the requirements of piggyback contracts. We continued. We added language regarding posting of solicitations on the county's VSS, which is the vendor self-service website, and to allow for additional public notice at the discretion of the procurement director. We've added language for correction of minor irregularity in bids. We've added a section to address the execution of contracts. And we've added language to clarify that if a contract is terminated within the initial award period, then the county may award to the next lowest bidder. We've also added that pre-qualifications can be used for orders over the mandatory or proposal amount as long as such are advertised on the vendor self-service system. We've added pre-qualification of contractors by construction departments for construction services. We've also added language to allow the procurement director to use IFB, which is invitation for bid, request for proposals, RFP, or ITN, invitation to negotiate tools, even if under the mandatory bid or proposal amount. And finally, we've added that the procurement director will develop policies and procedures for P-card usage by county departments. Now, as we go on here are some additional highlights which we deem to be important. We have recommended the following increase of thresholds: mandatory bid amount or proposal amount from $100,000 to $150,000. For contracts approved by the Director of Procurement, the authority of the Director of Procurement to approve the contract increases from 10% to 15%, with the county administrator's approval to go over 10%. For counties, contracts approved by the BCC and which are less than $300,000, the authority of the Director of Procurement to approve the contract increase from 10% to 15%, again with Ms. Baker's approval to go over 10%. And we continue with the increases as highlighted. The contracts approved by the BCC between $300,000 and $500,000, the authority will go of the CRC to approve increases up to 15%. For contracts approved by the BCC or the Director of Procurement, the authority for the Director of Procurement to extend the contract time from 3 months to 6 months, and the requirements for BCC approval or ratification of emergency purchases from $200,000 to $300,000. That aligns with the increase for signature authority. And we've deleted from the sole source, from the source selection section, the language that are required all conditions to remain unchanged, including SMWBE when extending term or increasing expenditure, and the term small purchases, which is covered under informal solicitations. I turn it over to Isami.
Thank you again, Melody. The protested awards section might be the one that benefited the most from lessons learned. We are proposing language to clarify that protests must be received by the procurement director within the specified time, and that the date, time, and time stamp of the procurement department controls. This is a large county, and protests delivered, for example, downtown, may take a few days to make it to the procurement department. We have clarified as well the section regarding the board accepting or rejecting the special master recommendation to clearly state that it is the board's prerogative to accept it or not. At the end, the special master only makes a recommendation, it does not adjudicate. In the protested awards section, we have added language to establish the requirement for a protest bond to be filed with the initial protest rather than at the time of the request of a special master. Protest processes are time-consuming and often result in delays to the natural course of county business. Therefore, staff believes that if we are to engage in the same, all participants must be fully invested. We remain fully committed to ensure that every party is given an opportunity to protest when said party believes that the procurement at hand was not appropriately conducted. But then again, given the impact that a protest has on the process, we feel that requiring the bond at the time of filing serves to ensure that all involved parties are fully committed to seeing the process through its completion. In this section, we have also added language regarding when the bond will be returned and when it will be forfeited. We're recommending that the protest bond be increased from its current $1,500 to $3,000, but we are proposing said increase be based on a sliding scale as a function of the total value of the solicitation in order to ensure that we are not detrimentally affecting small businesses. Please note that even at $3,000, the amount is still nominal. It does not cover our costs that the county incurs every time a protest is filed. As an example, just a fee for the special master is approximately $2,000. Under protested awards, we have redrafted the section related to the authority of the special master, and we have deleted no longer applicable language regarding prior equal business opportunity ordinances. In the section regarding suspension and debarment, we have added language authorizing the procurement director to suspend or debar vendors under exempt contracts and under contracts governed by the PREM ordinance. Under the current code, as the FDO director, I will need to keep a separate suspension and debarment list for vendors under the PREM ordinance. In a county of this size, we do not deem it efficient to have two separate lists, hence our recommendation to consolidate this authority under the purchasing director. We have redrafted as well the process for a vendor to protest suspension and debarment. We're also proposing several new sections to be added. A section entitled Ethical Standards in Procurement to capture industry accepted standards in public procurement. A section regarding construction services, basically to state that the 5 construction departments must procure construction-related services in compliance with Florida statutes. A section regarding CCNA services, to state that the Florida statutes govern when it relates to that type of services. A section regarding automation permitted, which might be the one that has us the most excited, to be honest, as we would like the opportunity to explore electronic alternatives to conduct our procurements. Our current system is mostly paper-based. And lastly, we have added a section to address unsolicited proposals. As this board might remember, back in June of 2023, staff was faced with the challenge of addressing an unsolicited proposal that was received for development at the South County Administrative Complex. At that time, in coordination with the county attorney's office, we had to determine how to handle the same, as the county does not currently have a process to deal with unsolicited proposals. We figure a path forward, and we notify the board that we will work on drafting a process. Therefore, the proposed new section is staff's attempt in delivering on the prior representation. We built on the framework provided by the Florida statutes to draft the process that is recommended for inclusion. Throughout the outreach process, we were questioned as to why a separate county process was required, given that the aforementioned section of the Florida statutes is in effect as it relates to unsolicited proposals. We share with stakeholders that although the state provision provides the framework, it lacks the logistical details needed as it relates to county operations. So for example, who should receive the proposal? What should be the bond amount? Who should notify the board and when the notification is to be issued? And for example, when will the cone of silence provisions enter into effect? Please note that we changed the order of slides 28 and 29 as included in the attachments to the workshop, as it appears best to discuss stakeholder outreach at this time. We engaged with the stakeholders listed on this slide. All were provided advanced copies of attachments 1 and 2 to the workshop item. And then during the meetings we had, they were given exactly the same presentation we're sharing with you today. Each meeting included a question and answer session. We conducted as typical commissioner briefings in late December and early January, after which we distributed the items to the stakeholders and coordinated in-person meetings with them that took place in February. In average, stakeholders had the documents available for review for about 3 or 4 weeks prior to today's meeting. We offered to compile a summary document of comments and questions received from all stakeholders. The same was finalized and circulated to all, and the board as well, prior to this meeting. We encourage all stakeholders to provide comments as they deem it appropriate, be it to us prior to the meeting or during today's workshop to the board. In reaching out to stakeholders, we pointed out that staff was going to the board with a workshop item, not with a first reading of a proposed ordinance, because we believe that the matter needed some additional discussion before proceeding to next steps. If this board were to direct us to continue to move forward and bring the proposed ordinance for a first reading, then please note that we will recommend the same be effective 180 days after approval to allow time for the associated revisions to county policies and procedures, as well as the required training that will be needed. In summary, staff is requesting board direction as to the proposed revisions to the purchasing code, and if it is to advance the proposed ordinance to the next procedural step, be it preliminary reading and then a public hearing. This brings our presentation to its end, and we will, as usual, take any questions as you deem it appropriate.
Thank you so much, Isame. That was an excellent presentation. Now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry I had to step out for a minute. There's 5 construction department directors. Did you say what 5?
I didn't, but those 5 are airports, water utilities, environmental resources management, facilities development and operations, and engineering and public works.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. On page 24, well, I have it as page 24, the 1,500 to 3,000 for the protest bond. You said that is below our cost? The 3,000 is below our cost?
Yeah, without that.
And I realize you don't want to put a burden on small business, but I don't think $3,000 is anything that will inhibit anybody who has deeper pockets. And maybe this should be based on a minimum of 3,000 and a sliding scale going up, because I don't, the protests put us, delay everything, and then the cost goes up for us. So I would see some kind of reworking of that wording. And I'm here, I'd like to see the rest of the board weigh in on that, because I think it's important. People like to delay what we do, and we're the ones that bear the brunt of that because costs go up. And so if it's a nominal fee, and if it's a throwaway fee for larger businesses, it's just a way to delay everything, and I don't think that's right.
Okay.
I think that's it. I may have more.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Baxter.
Just in regards to that, does this fee only apply to large businesses?
Will you please repeat the question? You said fee?
The increase from 1,500 to 3,000 for the protest bonds.
It will be the fee to be paid for anyone that wants to challenge a proposed award. So it might be a small business or a large business.
See, I guess I couldn't disagree more, because as a small business who struggled to get off the ground, $3,000 can be quite a bit of operating cost to put up for a bond, to have it held up for quite a while. So I was actually looking at the other end. Why are we increasing it? And I do understand it holds up processes, but I think everyone should be able to participate in the process, big, large, small. This isn't going to impact, again, large business. This is going to impact the small businesses who want to protest. So that's where I stand on that. And I have other things I wanted to go over, but I was just commenting on that one for now.
Respond to that? Okay, before I recognize Commissioner Bernard, Vice Mayor Marino would like to respond to that.
I think the clarification is there needs to be more information on how the protest takes place. What is the amount of the bid? And as I said, I did not want to hurt small business, but what I'm saying is if it is a very, very large bid and it's between 2 large contractors, $3,000 is nothing to them. So there needs to be an equity to this, but it also isn't a tool for large business to delay another large business.
So the current proposal we have provides a sliding scale between 1,500 and 3,000, right? And it's a small amount, we're not disagreeing, right? And that's why we stated in our presentation. And we use procurements valued as 500,000, $500,000 as our trigger, right? So if you're under that 500,000, then you go with the lower amount. If you're over, we go with the $3,000. We recommended an increase because the current amount is nominal. And Melody, your fee for special master, I think, is just over $2,000, correct?
Correct. And the amount of time that we prepare just in getting the documents, responding. Right now, as the process starts, the vendors can come in, the interested parties, rather, can come in and stall the process. So for instance, we had one last year for FDO, and it was delayed about 9 months approximately, just dealing with the protest process alone, not including special master staff time, the county attorney's office.
So I think from staff perspective, if I may, we're in no way, shape, or form representing that the increase to $3,000 will cover the costs. Every time we handle a protest, and I'm going to use FDO as an example, it includes the FDO director, the director of business operations within the department, the using section, and then it translates to purchasing director herself and our colleagues from county attorneys. So just in staff time before we make it to special master, there is a significant investment from the county. We do see the increase as a mean of, as I stated during the presentation, showing that we're truly invested in the process, all parties included, right?
Well, as a 30-year small business owner, very small business owner, I do understand the process. What are for other counties that are comparable to us, what is their procedure for this?
We have not done that research. We can come back to this board with that information.
And if they have an OEBO component, then it's important to compare. And this way, if we have that information, we can make a better decision.
Isami, how long will it take for you to provide the board with that information? I think it's a good question, and I think it's an answer that we would really need to consider on this workshop.
Certainly, we could come back to this board with that information. I will ask at least a month before rescheduling so that we can do the benchmarking and reach out to our colleagues.
Let me just, if I may, piggyback on what you're saying, Vice Mayor. How can we streamline government? We are charging people money for our staff time when it goes from one office to another office to another, and then to another office. We have got to be able to, and I wish if you could, when you respond to this inquiry by the Vice Mayor on what other comparable counties are doing, and let's look at Broward and Miami-Dade. What I would like for you also to review, how can we streamline our administrative costs, which we have, they're actual costs, they need to be reimbursed, but we're also operating with businesses, and time is money. So how can we, and the question for you, please, how can we streamline this business process so that we can meet the needs of small businesses in the county? I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
No, I don't want to impact small businesses.
This is a workshop. This is a workshop, so.
I don't want to impact small business, but I also don't want to impact all of our taxpayers by an unnecessary protest. So that is why I'm asking, what are the best practices already in place with comparable counties?
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Baxter, are we still on the same
I wanted
topic?
to just follow up because
Okay,
I think
go right
Isami
ahead.
clarified what I was asking. It just wasn't in our presentation or packet. You said under 500,000 is at 1,500 and above would be at the higher rate. So then I would support Vice Mayor if she wanted to raise it above 3,000 for people over $500,000. But especially for the people under, I'd like to keep that at the 1,500.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I don't want to impact small businesses. That's why I asked, we need to find out really what other counties are doing, but the sliding scale for the small business is fine.
Okay, very good. Glad we cleared that up. All right, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was a question of mine on slide 24. I do support keeping the 1,500 for under 500,000, but for, if it's more than 500,000, I think I'm okay with it going more and, based on whatever comparables that you want to provide us. But, if the projects are being delayed, it's costing us more money, and that's impacting our residents. So whatever that we can do to stop frivolous challenges, it'll, at least help us move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the dollar amounts that we're talking about as far as, if it's a small project, keeping the number down. I mean, if it's a very large project, I think it should at least cover the cost to us. But the other important thing to note on the change here is actually the time of the bond that has to be paid, because right now it's it can be after that 9-month, or it can be after a very long period, and now we're actually changing it to from the beginning. Could you clarify that?
That is correct. So under the current process, the bond is filed when the company requests the special master, okay? And that's a step just before it comes to the board, right? So at that point, we have dealt with the initial notification, intent to protest. We have managed a significant amount of work at the department level between purchasing and whatever user department it is, before we make it to a special master. So we believe and we're recommending that it be requested at the very beginning. If we're going to engage through a process that may take 6, 9 months, a year, we had a protest a couple of years ago that took a year, then let's all be invested in the process from the get-go.
Okay, so I agree with, maybe we don't have to go super high with the dollar amount, since we are putting it at the very beginning of the protest, so instead of giving them a chance to back out later after all of this time has been spent. So, but if it's a very large project, I think we should at least cover our cost.
Very good. Thank you. And Commissioner Baxter.
Are we concluded on this particular issue?
We're never concluded on any issue, Commissioner. We're still reviewing it. We do have a card.
There were a couple things I had questions and some concerns. So question,
go right
you
ahead.
wanted to remove a definition, said revised. You wanted to remove some definitions, and one of those was a living wage ordinance definition. So what are we replacing that with?
And we're not replacing it. It's not affecting the living wage ordinance itself. The current ordinance has living wage defined, but then doesn't use the word throughout the document. So why have a term that is not used, right? We were aiming to provide a document that reads better and make it more concise, and that's why we deleted unused terms.
And the same with vendor? We don't use vendor?
Well, we redefined that. If you go to the presentation now, we have contractor, consultant, vendor, so all the words tied together rather than having 4 or 5 different definitions when we're all meaning to say the same, right? So we consolidated that.
I just wanted clarification, so thank you for that. I didn't, on page 15, award of contracts by the procurement director. It says, and construction department directors from less than 200,000 to less than 300,000. So it won't see us under that amount, is what I'm understanding. And do you feel this is necessary to streamline some processes? Because I do like seeing what we're approving to that high of an amount.
So just to restate what the current process is before I answer a question, if I may, if that is okay. Under the current process, there are 6 departments that have authority to sign. That's the purchasing department and the 5 construction department heads that I mentioned before, okay? Our authority to sign contracts goes up to $200,000. Once we hit $200,000, it needs to come to the board. We cannot approve. Based on the factors we shared before, cost increases since this was put in place, and escalation, we did the research and we're recommending that that amount be increased to $300,000. It is certainly the board's prerogative to do so or not. We are bringing the information based on the analysis we conducted.
Does bringing it to the board slow down the process, and if so, by how much?
The process to schedule an agenda item to the board, to be considered by the board, takes 5 to 6 weeks since we put it in movement, right? So once, for example, it leaves my office as FDO director, there are several steps that need to take place and revisions that are required before it makes it to the board. That's a little bit different than the process we have internally within a department, as you can imagine, because if I have a document that needs my signature, same like Melody, we still have an internal process and we have check and balances, but it hits my desk, right? And it's usually approved shortly thereafter because there's not a requirement for public meeting. So the processes are different, and we did look as to every step in that process in coming to the board. And I will say with quite a bit of certainty that we do not have wasted time. We do have a lot of steps that need to happen. And that's a result of government, right? And I say that candidly with a smile, right? There are check and balances along that process before an item makes it to this board.
I will wait on this particular issue to maybe hear back if my fellow board members agree or disagree with. If it's not slowing down the process and you're just saying staff, it's adding steps to bring it back to us, I think this is, significant dollars that we should be approving or disapproving, and maybe potentially splitting the difference might be a compromise. But I will wait on that one. In the meantime, I'm going to follow up so we're not prolonging too much of this. I did like the requirement to post a notice of intent to designate a sole source, I guess, but it did bring back a topic, not for discussion today overall as a part of this package, but we were looking at a sole source for permitting process in our building department because we have some lag there. And I would like to know and get an update at some point on why we haven't implemented it or at least started some sort of program with the AI permitting program. After coming back from NACO and FACTS and talking to other counties that have used it very successfully and they love the program, I'm really concerned about it not coming to us, but that just happened to remind me of it. The other thing, the page 19 at the bottom, it says the procurement director will develop policies and procedures for P card usage by county departments. I think that is great that we're looking at this, but I would like to have you work with the individual, unless they don't want to, individual commissioner offices to get that input individually from us, if you don't mind, because they have been used for travel things. So I just think it would be good for us to all have some input on that. And lastly, on page 23, it was more of a question. It says that protests must be received by the procurement director within a specific time. Oh, excuse me, the bottom one. The section regarding the BCC accepting or rejecting the special master's recommendation, it says the section regarding, so it's been updated, but what has been updated?
To make it very, very clear that it is the board's prerogative to accept or not, okay? It was there, it was already part of the language, but as staff, we have been questioning in the past as to why this board may choose or not to accept or not the special master's recommendations. Your prerogative, right? So we wanted that clearly in white and black and white, so to speak, so there was no possibility of confusion.
Okay, so not things really changing, it's just getting clarified that it's coming to us.
We are just clarifying. I can tell you point blank that we were questioned before and during the outreach process. You know, this board has in the past made decisions where it has accepted the recommendation from the special master, and it has accepted or decided not to accept the recommendation from the special master. And we, I can assure you, receive questions asking, well, why is that the case? You know, if a special master issued an opinion, why just the board didn't just accept it and move forward? And our position has been conveyed, which is the current status. It is the board prerogative. And now I'm crossing over county attorney, so either colleague might assist me.
It's okay, they keep an eye on you, Isme. Is there anything that would you like to add? Anybody else on that? Okay, very good.
Did you want to say?
Our
No, I was
attorney?
just going to say I agree with Isme on that.
You agree with it?
Yeah,
Excellent.
there were not major changes made to that section, just
Okay.
really cleaning some things up.
Okay, very good.
And so thank you guys for all your hard work. This is a lot of information to digest and go through, and thank you for your patience in explaining some of those. I do look forward to hearing back from my board in regards to the amount awards and like their take on it, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. County Administrator Baker.
Just to go back to Commissioner Baxter's question on the difference in going from the 200,000 to 300,000, everything that they will be signing off on to expedite the process, this board has approved through the budget process.
Yes.
So they don't just come up with projects and sign off on them. It has to have gone through the budget process and within the budget.
If you don't mind, Mayor. So my concern with that is, I think anyone who has looked at our budget knows it's very substantial, and it can very easily, things kind of get by us through a binder that is more than that thick. So really, it's kind of like the last step before it actually happens, that it comes to us, because there is no way I think any one of us, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I definitely cannot remember every line item on every budget that we've passed. So this is just another way for us to see it again, which is where we then have special attention on it. But I do appreciate what you're saying. It's already budgeted for, so we're not expending more dollars, but it does come before us to make some final decisions.
Before I recognize Commissioner Barnett, what is the issue with keeping it at 200,000 and not 300,000?
No issue.
Okay,
This is
good.
just a recommendation.
Just for what?
This is just a recommendation.
A
No issue.
recommendation, okay. So if we kept it at 200,000, just as a checks and balance, then there wouldn't be any other issue that would compel us to take it up to 300,000.
We keep operating as we are today.
Yes,
Mayor,
ma'am.
I think the reason we're looking at it is because other comparable counties that we would compare ourselves to, they're somewhat a little higher, some are a little lower. And the reason we're doing it is, again, trying to streamline the process and expedite things that you have already given us permission to do. So this just allows us to move it a little faster.
May I suggest that the two questions that you're going to come back to us with is comparable counties, and I think we designated, we're not talking about Union or Ocala, we're talking about Broward and Dade, just to be a little light, right? A little lighthearted here.
More
And the
Broward.
second, and the second would be how we can streamline this process. I think that would be a huge advantage for businesses in Palm Beach County to assist them. Now, Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Ismay, thank you for your report. Not to get too far off subject, but I was looking at page 29 with regards to stakeholder outreach. I'm not sure how many of these entities are represented here today. I know AGC is, and we have a card. We're speaking on this. I was just wondering if you could tell us what went into that outreach, your engagement with these groups, and if you have any feedback from them that you could share with us.
Yes, certainly. So we did exactly the same with each group, right? And that's important. After we completed commissioner briefings, we reached out to them via email. We introduced ourselves, obviously, and said we would like to meet with you. We provided them attachments 1 and 2 to the agenda item. At the time, we reached out via email so that they had an idea of what the meeting was going to be about. And then when we met with them in person, we showed them exactly the same presentation that we showed you today, right? And we walked them through the presentation. And then at the end of the meeting, we had a question and answer conversation. There were some stakeholders that brought in their members from the group. There were some stakeholders that it was just the lead person from the organization. There was one stakeholder that said, I have reviewed everything, no need to meet, just keep us posted. And then we had one stakeholder that was in multiple committees and got to see the presentation in her role under a given committee and said, no need to hear it again, we're covered. So we're good, we will connect with you afterwards. We circulated to the board a summary document. It's basically 3 pages. It's not meant to be a transcription, as you can imagine, but it was meant to highlight the key comments and questions asked, right? And we received comments and feedback from, during those meetings, AGC, Black Chamber of Commerce, Economic Council of Palm Beach County, Equal Business Opportunity Advisory Committee, and the Infrastructure Sales Tax Oversight Committee. More than happy to walk through the details. You please tell me so that I don't take too much time. So sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, also the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches.
I apologize.
No
I
problem.
missed that.
It's okay. I just want, before you respond, did you send these comments to us?
I did. Yes.
And would that be in that large 3-ring binder?
No.
Thank God.
Those binders, I sent them the comments last Friday via email, along with an email from the Florida Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce and an email from AGC.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Barnett.
If you've already sent this information to us, then it's known. I don't, feel a need to rehash it here, but I appreciate it. Would you say the responses were mostly, I guess, supportive in advancing the proposed ordinance change?
I think overall they were. They had some questions. If I were to classify the questions, this will be my attempt. I think there were some questions that had to do with not being as familiar as we are with the ordinance, right? It's you know, we are so deep into county operations that is our second nature. That's not the case for everyone out there, right? So there were some questions that was, explain this definition, what does this mean, walk us through how it works. I think across the board, there was good support for the context and the approach. I think most of them felt that it was a good idea to revisit it. I think out of all stakeholders, we only had one that felt didn't have sufficient time to review. Everyone else actually got back to us during the meeting or afterwards. We remember one meeting where one of the members said, you know, I had a flight, so nothing better than read 60 pages of purchasing code. So it was a combination. But overall, I will argue we did not receive any negative feedback, which is important.
Commissioner Barnett, would you like them to resend it to all of us?
Yeah, please.
So you could review it? That'd be fine.
That's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ismay.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Barnett. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to go back to the, on page 15, where we were talking about the thresholds, if we were to change it to 300,000, what would be the step before the contract approval? Would it still be part of the project approval that would come to the board?
It comes in the budget, right? So department directors, the 6 department directors that we mentioned before, have no authority to do anything else but what the board has authorized us to do, right? So you will see it at the time of budgeting when the project is approved, and then it will not come back to you if it is less than 300,000. We will approve it at our level. You will see it as a receive and file. That's exactly what happens right now, but the threshold is 200,000. So if it goes over 200, you see it. If it is under 200,000, we approve it. But again, we can only act on matters that you have authorized.
And if I could, I was taking notes, but to make sure, I had that you said Broward is 500,000 and Miami-Dade is 1 million currently?
That is correct.
Okay. No, we're not, I know we're not trying to get to that number, but just, I mean, I wrote that down, that Broward and Miami-Dade are significantly higher right now.
Yes.
And these numbers are almost 20 years old since we've changed the threshold?
This is one of those concepts that dates back to 2005. Our ordinance, I want to make that very clear, was adopted in 2015, but when you take a deeper dive, there are some things that truly come from the one previous ordinance to it.
All right. Are there any other questions? We have a card, and Commissioner Weiss will take care of that.
Thank you, Michelle DePotter.
Hi, just as one of the organizations that was mentioned representing construction, who met with Assistant County Administrator Ayala Colazo, hopefully I didn't butcher that. Melody and your entire team, you guys did an exceptional job with us. We had an in-person meeting. We brought our general counsel, who's here today, Adam Linkhorst and Hotkin. We have vetted this process out. Many of our members had the opportunity to hear presentations with other groups who might have belonged to. We didn't see any real things. We did have some questions, and your team was responsive in answering to us, which we appreciated. We may have some more questions down the line, but I don't see any right now. And speaking to thresholds, we actually agree with that. In the realm of construction, $300,000 isn't a lot of money, but I also understand that you guys are custodians of the taxpayer dollars, and I understand that as well. We were supportive of the bond increase and all of those things. So currently, we don't have any further questions, and we thank you for your time and to meet in person with you and the multiple follow-up emails and phone calls. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Potter. Commissioner Baxter.
It sounds like no one has some real concerns, and it doesn't, so I guess I withdraw my hesitation from being at the 300.
Well, this is why we have a workshop. We can discuss it and talk to each other about it, because now I know that Vice Mayor Marino has something to say.
Well, no, it's, as Ismay pointed out, it is on our receive and file, and we get that every meeting. So we have the opportunity to pull something from the receive and file if we have any questions. So I'm comfortable with the 300,000. I would have been comfortable with the 350 because we're at 369 in relative dollars, but I'm not going to throw a wrench. So I'm comfortable with the 300. And again, it is in our receive and file. Anytime we have any questions about dollars that are coming across our desk, we can pull anything from the receive and file report.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm okay with the 300,000, but I'm glad my colleagues had a robust conversation about it. The idea of streamlining these operations and being able to move these projects as quickly as possible. I mean, ultimately, it's the taxpayers that are the beneficiaries of the work that gets done by the county. So I think there's a great benefit in that so that they get these projects done as quickly as possible. I thought, looking at how you, unfortunately, in the recent years, we've seen how, unfortunately, sometimes contracts have to be canceled because of performance issues. Streamlining that process and again, something that the taxpayers benefit from when that we have the ability to do that. So I appreciate you looking at that. And lastly, just everything we can do. I was happy to hear that you're going to be looking at potentially looking to go paperless, I hope, as quickly as possible. And I appreciate my colleagues' comments, Commissioner Baxter, on, I know my understanding is our building department is looking at how they may streamline permitting and plan review. So I think that's great. And there's new technology to really help in that too. So yeah, I think you always have hit a lot of the issues and concerns, and glad you're updating this.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Weiss. I think at this point, we could probably withdraw those two issues that you were going to review, and that was Broward and Dade, because I think we have an answer to that, as well as streamlining government, because I think Commissioner Weiss has responded to that, and I know that we are moving forward on making things work faster, more efficiently in government to help business. So if I'm reading the board correctly, I think we have pretty much concurrency on staff requests for our direction for those two issues that are up on the board today. So at this time, we can advance this to the next procedural step, which is a preliminary reading. And that I think will be handled by the clerk in terms of the date. We could either get it now or do it right now. Let's do it right now. I like that. Clerk, when do we have a date that we can proceed to the next step?
Handle next step in April. It will be better, if possible. That will allow us to address the protest bond issue, do the benchmarking, and update the proposed ordinance with that new information.
And if you could also talk about what Commissioner Weiss talked about with regard to streamlining, because what you do in the procurement really affects the issues that our constituents ask us about all the time. Why does it take so long? Appreciate that very, very much. So if there's no other issues or questions before this staff, we can move forward with the next. Isami, I hope you have something to drink there for you, because you're going on to the next one.
I'm approaching the last one.
Yes. The last
Mayor,
one,
I'd like to thank
second to the
staff
last.
for all the hard work. A lot of work went into this. This was one of my major goals in becoming the county administrator, was to get this purchasing ordinance reviewed and updated along with our compensation program as well. And they actually it started with Audrey and Kathy. And they retired, and they picked it up. And I'd also like to thank you, Annie, for all of your hard work in this as well.
Sweet.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Baker, I think we owe you thank you for leading this way and having this so transparent that we can discuss it and make changes, make suggestions, and I think that really shows good leadership on your part. Thank you, Ms. Baker. Now, the lady to my right, Vice Mayor.
Just a question. We're going to talk about the Government Center renewal and replacement is our
Yes.
next item.
Yes.
And It is now the lunch hour, the noon
So
hour.
good to have Italians on this one.
So my
Comes to
question
food.
is, because I don't think this is going to be a short discussion, do we want to do a discussion with a hard stop at 1 to go to lunch because we have to come back at 2 to talk about infrastructure surtax? Or do we want to break for lunch now and come back at 1?
Who's paying for lunch?
We're all paying
so
for
I
our own
didn't say-
lunch. This is government. We're paying
Commissioner
for our own
Baxter,
lunch.
you have something to say about this.
If the board doesn't mind, so we do have the visitors here all the way from Belglade, instead of making them wait, and they only have 10 minutes to present really that they were going to take. If you wouldn't mind maybe reordering it to allow them to go, and then we can break for lunch. And then come
sounds-
back and talk about the building.
That sounds fair. Let me just check with the other commissioners. Does that sound okay to everybody? Okay, all right, and that's okay with you, Vice Mayor?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So why don't we proceed on that, with that regard? So Commissioner Baxter, could you tell us, you have visitors here from the Glades?
Yes, so it was on the One North Lake project. It was the last on our
And this
agenda,
would
the
be-
ad. I guess it was an addition for today.
Yes.
And they've been working with Sherry Howard and Jonathan for quite a while now, but I don't want to steal their thunder. I'll let them explain.
And this, for the clerk, we are now jumping over 4B and moving on to 4D, which is the add-on, District 6 Housing Initiative, 1 North Lake Pahokee Preservation. And folks, what we may want to do is if staff, and I'll ask staff, we could either proceed with staff presentation and then go on to our visitors, or we could hear the visitors' testimony and then break and then go on to your presentation. Whatever your pleasure is.
Our preference would be to provide the board with just some opening comments and then turn it over to
I
the
think that would be
developer.
appropriate. So for the clerk, we are now starting on 4D with a brief opening statement by staff. Then we'll hear, folks, you submitted cards, I'm sure. No? Okay.
We're the agent speaking on the project.
Very good, okay. Just as long as you identify yourself for the record. So right now, we're going to have an opening statement by staff, and then we're going to move forward with your presentation. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Tammy Fields, Assistant County Administrator. Also at the table is Howard Falcon from the County Attorney's Office, Sherry Howard, and Jonathan Brown from Housing and Economic Development. We just wanted to preface the presentation by the developer to say that this is a project that staff has been working with the developer on. There's history that goes all the way back to 2011, which is prior to the current configuration of the partnership. Up to this point in time, the county has invested a little over $500,000 in this project, starting with doing demolition of the structures back in 2011 and some relocation, and there's also $100,000 that is currently reserved for the infrastructure grant. The board last week approved having this project make a presentation today. I do want to caution the board that this project is, the developers have indicated that they are going to be submitting proposals under the current RFPs under the housing bond. Those will be closing on March 7th and on March 14th, one for workforce housing and one for affordable housing. So we do recommend as staff that that process be allowed to continue. And we have indicated to the developer that in the event that they aren't able to score, because we do recognize any projects out in the Glades have some additional complications with soil preparation and the like, that we do have other funding sources that we could work with them after we see a completed
proposal, because it has changed of late with additional units, which is great because it will increase the ability to have affordable housing.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, folks, you are recognized.
Thank you. My name is Chuck Lesnick, and not only did Don, you come from the Glades, I came from New York, where I live mostly when I'm not in Wellington.
Well, then you can sit down. That's all right.
I do have a family here for the last 30 years.
All right.
I didn't have any other choice, I'm sorry.
And actually, we'll tell that story. And we're not going to make a presentation with an ask. We're actually going to just introduce you to us so you know our faces, so you know the project, so that when it comes up, we are very appreciative of the staff work that we've had. Certainly, I've been working with them for the last 4 years, and also for your district commissioner who brought us here today and is trying to help in any way possible. So I'm going to introduce Aaron Taylor, who's our chief planner, and then I'll poke back in afterwards. Aaron will just set the stage.
Very good. Go right ahead, sir. You're recognized.
I know everybody's hungry, so I'll be brief. Aaron Taylor, Arc Development Global, for the developer and for the property owner, Ms. Danya Roberts. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. So once again, we're just here to give an overview of the project. My company does everything from land acquisition through full entitlement, and for this particular project, I was brought in to do the entitlement for the project. I was brought in about 2 years ago, even though this project has been in the process for about 15 years off and on with different development groups, prospects, and consultants. I was brought in to try to bring it to the finish line for entitlements, and we originally submitted for an entitlement for 40 units of a 3-story building, which is, excuse me, I'm not used to working this thing, which is this, and this isn't just a pretty picture. This is actually based on construction documents that have already been completed, and we did receive full entitlements back in January from the city of Pahokee for this project. For 40 units, but we're in the process of already getting the 54 units, so we're going up another floor from 3 to 4 units and adding another 14. This is what the project will look like actually when it's completed, minus the 4th floor, because we don't have that rendering as of yet. This is the site plan approval that we received from the ZAP board back in January, and I also brought it before City Council. They didn't have to vote on it, but it was just a professional courtesy to bring it before board members that hadn't had a chance to review the project. We'll skip through most of this. We're only here because we have been working with staff, and I have to thank them so much for facilitating and trying to be creative to make something work that doesn't fit in a perfect box. We have looked at multiple funding sources, including the ones they brought before us. And as you stated so well, that economic obsolescence is a very real issue in that area, specifically Pahokee, where you don't have any comparables for this type of project. You don't have, it's groundbreaking, it's pioneering for the area, and this is the closest anybody's gotten to not just getting the project approved, but to actually having funding sources in place. They have 30 years of experience plus doing these kind of projects around the country, plus multiple projects here in Florida, and we're finally close to the finish line, and staff is vigorously working to try to find us a path forward. So we are actually going to submit for the RFP as suggested by staff. But we wanted to just come before the board so that you can see our faces and know that when we do come before you, whether it's through the RFP or whatever other funding process and opportunity you guys see fit for this project, that you keep in mind that this project is a real catalyst for change in that area. And although people have really tried, we're probably going to be the first people that can actually make it happen. So I'm going to hand it over to Chuck Lesnick, who's the developer and has a lot more years of experience in this than I do, and he'll take over. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. You're recognized.
Thanks, Aaron. So on the next page, the capital funding stack, oh, we had it right here. The first number there, that 8.7 million, that's FHA, that's HUD. And one of the institutional things that we're trying to work out are things like HUD lends money for 40 years. They don't let us borrow money from any other level of government for a period of time less than 40 years. The county bond is 20 years because that's what the bond is. So trying to figure out how to work with HUD to nuance it, how to work with the county, that's why your staff have been really helpful for us. The next item on there, the cash, $2.6 million. We appreciate greatly, by the way, the county has put in $500,000. We're going to have to put in, we've already put in $500,000 of federal opportunity zone funds. And let me also say that this is one of the I don't know if it's the first, but one of the best instances of using the Federal Opportunity Zone program, which, as you remember, was a bipartisan initiative by Cory Booker and Tim Scott, put in by President Trump in 2019. And both Governor DeSantis and President Trump said that all state and local governments are supposed to give priority to projects in the Opportunity Zone. So we go to the top of the pile, we get fast consideration from HUD, and hopefully favorable consideration from HUD. And that's what brought us down here. We were working on another project with the Palm Beach Economic Development folks, and they hooked us up with Danya and her crew. And Danya's been toiling in the vineyards for at least a dozen years in Pahokee. So that's that. The next page here, since we're going quickly, is just the multifamily rental unit mix. And again, if you look at the AMI rents, you look at the rents, our numbers here are the HUD numbers. The county actually would allow us to use more generous numbers, but we can't because we're getting the money from HUD. So that's one of those things where we're trying to work with the two levels of government to make it work. But you should just know that because of the income level in Pahokee, 70% of the county AMI, the rent $12.75. That's pretty much market rent there. They're going to get decent, high-quality housing, something that hasn't been built in 50 years. That was one of the problems that Aaron alluded to, us getting comparable values, because HUD requires an appraisal. There was no comparable 50-unit new construction that we could look at. Because we're not doing a presentation, I'm not going to go through the multifamily unit mix, but it's for your information. You guys can call us at any time and ask about it. After the submittal on March 7th, some of this will become more clear. So then the last thing is the reasons for the request for the funding. Again, the higher cost of construction in the glades due to the soil conditions, the demucking, and the pilings. You get a lot more rent here in West Palm Beach than you can in the glades, yet it costs more to build in the glades. I just mentioned the appraisal, the NOFA stuff, the unintended result of making the glades proposals less competitive. Interest rates. When we first started this in 2019, they were 2%. Now we just got the funding for the Lake Park project, 10%. It's gone up. Construction costs have gone up, again, we've gone through some of these other RFPs. The staff of the county has pointed us in the direction of some of them, but because of sort of institutional issues, we're having some problems with it. And the last item here, benefits of receiving funding to kickstart the downtown Pahokee, really create a there, so that when people go there, they know they're there. There's no real downtown there. There will be once this project is the anchor. And we actually have acquired properties across the street, some old historic buildings that in our phase 2, we want to do a commercial revitalization of. And part of the 108 loan that we got from the county is for the commercial piece across the street. There'll be an increase in property taxes paid with this $17 million project coming in employing local construction workers. Local businesses will reap both benefits from the $17 million infusion in that area. The site's been designated in a manner that Aaron's gone through. We've gotten the various approvals, and Pahokee seems to be really on board. So this is one that we can go forward with the county and Pahokee together.
Thank you. So, did you have something? Go right ahead, ma'am.
I would just like to say thank you so much for the opportunity today. Again, my name is Danya Roberts. I am from Pahokee and have been working in the legal field. I'm an attorney for 32 years, but this is a passion project. We believe that this will not only help have decent housing for people in Pahokee, which we do not have now, but this will be a jump start to revitalize the entire downtown area, of which we are working on projects to do that as well. So we appreciate, first of all, I have to say, I don't want to call anybody out, but Miss Sherry Howard has drugged me through this process for the last 15 years.
No.
And the county truly has been instrumental in helping me still be standing here after 15 years. I'm not going to let this project go, and we appreciate all the direction from your staff to help us get where we need to be, so thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Sir.
I just want to piggyback on what she said. I used to work for Palm Beach County. Some people don't know that. So I understand the difficulty of trying to find a process that is fair and equitable for everybody. but also at the same time having the challenges of trying to do something groundbreaking that doesn't fit in the box always written by policy. And so I just thank staff to continue to work and to be diligent in trying to find us a path moving forward, even though it doesn't necessarily fit in things that have already been established. And their over the top efforts have gotten us this far, and we just look forward to the continued effort from both the support of the board and from staff to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Commissioner Weiss and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. A couple questions. First one is to staff. Do we require that they have to go to the maximum AMI or the maximum allowable rent, or can they can be underneath that if they want?
Good morning or afternoon, Commissioner. No, they can go less than the maximum allowable rents. Again, as projects, they have to balance it out in terms of making sure
There's no requirement by the county that they have to go to the maximum. So it sounded like maybe earlier, I think I heard you say that because I think our projects, we allow to go up to 120% AMI. But in this one, I saw it was listed at about 70% is for HUD, whatever HUD is requiring. But they could even go on below that, and county would have doesn't violate anything we've done. Okay, good. And then just a quick question for you all. Did you say you're still waiting for approval from Pahokee?
No, we received full entitlement for the 40 units, but the city wanted us to go up to another floor to get the 54, so we're actually going through that process.
So you're waiting on
the 54,
on
yes,
the 54,
40,
which
yeah.
is in front of us today. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sherry and staff, for working with them, getting them this far along in the HUD process. I mean, if any of my fellow commissioners have not been to Pahokee, I suggest you please take a tour. This is a much-needed project. The impact of this is indescribable. I can't tell you how thankful I am that this has even come before me. When we were discussing this, this presentation served as twofold for me, because it came to my attention, actually, that this started prior to even having a housing bond. And yet, because of the timing and us trying to do something good with the housing bond, they now have been through the process told that you have to go through our RFP housing bond and get denied before you can even get money from the housing initiative effort. So how many years have we been funding the housing initiative fund? I mean, more or less, 3, 5, 10,
4 years.
3 or 4 years. Have any projects used any of those dollars yet?
We have not had a project to come through that particular program as of yet, because we have the ARPA, the CARES, and other dollars,
So for 3 or 4 years, we have been funding this fund, and not one project has had the benefit of that use. That, I understand, isn't always as easy as possible, but when I have a project like this that can help an area so much and in a much needed place, it breaks my heart that we haven't tripped over ourselves trying to make that happen. Now, because and I did speak with someone on the Pahokee Council, and they were the ones who suggested the 4th floor. So I can't imagine in any world where they're not going to say we absolutely need 14 more units and another floor out in the Pahokee area. I can't see making them spend another $7,500 of time and staff and prolonging this process to get denied. We're making them go through a bond process that we know just by looking at the paperwork they're going to get denied. I think that is a terrible system. And I do understand the hesitation of wanting to have them, not to have this open up to everyone. You know, we work under these worst case scenarios that everyone's going to want some of these dollars. But we should be able to look at what we have in place. We should be able to look at what those parameters are and not make them waste time, dollars, and money to go through a formal process just to get denied. I mean, that is, we literally sat up here and said, delays equal expense. And now these delays are going to continue costing dollars. Now, myself and Ms. Baker have had a conversation, and she was also interested in, and you can correct me, in the 4th floor. And I had said, well, have we used any of our housing initiative dollars? And there were $5 million in there, because originally they were asking for half, but it was less units to try to get this project to fruition. So I would like us to take a strong look at our process of how these housing initiative dollars can get used and streamline it with something that makes more sense than go submit for this and get denied before you can even get to those dollars. I mean, if you want to take a look and see that it doesn't fall within the parameters of a bond, great. But the way it's structured now is making it impossible for anyone to use these dollars. So the twofold of this was to ask my board if they would object to helping this project be streamlined by allowing them to use dollars that have already been budgeted for this type of project, 1. And 2, to support an effort to not make them waste time and money getting denied through a housing bond process before getting to use housing initiative dollars. I mean, somebody can look at it and say it doesn't qualify without having to go through the however many steps you have to go through with the bond process. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bernard,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
you want to respond?
Yes, but I don't
Okay.
mind waiting for Commissioner Bernard.
I thought, because Commissioner Bernard,
Wow, this is
let's hear what Commissioner Bernard has to say on this.
This is a real tough issue that we're addressing, because this is our first time that we are putting out the RFP for the housing bond, and that, we created the bond allocation process, and, we have the RFPs are going to be due March 7th and March 14th. I think that it is important for us to let the process play out, because we created but we don't know how it's going to really work out. We're committed to, I know that when we were advocating for the housing bond, and we talked to the Glades folks, wanting to make sure that they're going to participate in the housing bond. And so my suggestion would be to, submit for the RFP, because we want to see what are the kinks and how do we improve the process. And, if it doesn't meet the point process, I can tell you, Commissioner Baxter, I'm committed to making sure that this works, that we were able to fund it, but I want to see them to submit, so in that way we'll know exactly what are the things that we need to improve on the process that we approved.
Right. Commissioner Baxter, and I'll get to Commissioner Woodward in just a minute. Commissioner, would you wish to respond?
Just to clarify, so they have already submitted. It was for the 3 floors. They already went through and submitted. Am I wrong? You already submitted.
We submitted a previous RFP, but the ones that came out for the affordable housing and the workforce housing that's due on March 7th and March 14th, I believe, that's the one we will be
submitting
applying
for.
Correct.
And we've already looked at it and established that it doesn't meet parameters.
Sure,
Not-
go
not in a
ahead. I know
formal
that
way
for
we
the
go
bond.
Well, no, Commissioner Jetson, it meets the parameters. What they've seen is the scoring criteria, and they don't think they're going to get all the points in the scoring criteria. It qualifies for the housing bond, no doubt. And, if it leveraged better, it would score better if it did some other things. And they're seeing that it won't do that. But it's 100% eligible to apply for the housing bond, just as in 2 years ago, that project applied for the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan dollars as well. But unfortunately, it was incomplete and wasn't submitted in time. So we've tried. We've been working with them, and we'll continue to work with them.
So they are going to have to redo all of their things, go up to the 4th floor, and then you're saying they could still, even without those points, get approved for the housing bond?
They may not, depending on where they fall in the points with the scoring, they may not get the housing bond, but what we have said to any of the developers who are looking at the housing bond dollars right now, that we do have other funds available, the housing initiative dollars that you've identified, and that if there are quality eligible projects that are meeting our affordable housing needs, particularly in communities, we would be looking at how to fund it through the housing initiative dollars if it wasn't completely eligible for the housing bond dollars. Up until yesterday and today, we did not have, as staff, the revised numbers and scope. With the 54 units, we still only had 40 units. So what we're asking from a staff perspective is to have the opportunity to be able to look at the project in its now revised state and be able to evaluate it in moving forward.
Why didn't we move forward 2 years ago prior to a housing bond and use housing initiative dollars then?
Well, 2 years ago, they applied for the American Rescue Plan dollars, and again, in order for us to move it forward to the board, it has to be submitted on time and it has to be responsive. And it wasn't submitted timely, so it was never considered by the board.
Did we have housing initiative dollars then?
We had housing initiative dollars at that
Ms.
point.
Baker, would you like to add to this?
We did have housing initiative dollars. The whole goal is to, again, like everything else that the state requires and the public requires, that there's a competitive process. So they unfortunately missed it through the ARPA funds. They're going to make it this time, and they will have gone through a competitive process. We've got 2 others that may or may not make it as well through this competitive process. So we may be bringing you 3 eligible projects. One, Village of Valor. The second one may be
Davis Commons.
Davis Commons, which is a CLT, and then this project. But they will all have gone through this competitive process, and we'll have a better idea of the viability of the project. We actually received additional information from District 6 on yesterday. And then the handout that you have today, this is the first time we're seeing it. It looks very good. And we always work with our partners in the Glades because the housing is so drastically needed, along with other areas on the East Coast as well. And so housing is something that we're very passionate about, and making sure that we work with all the projects. But we do strongly recommend to this board that projects go through the competitive process, so we've got justification. We've looked at it across the board against other projects, and then if they don't make it, that pot of money that you set aside for you allow us to set aside for ad valorem, it's more flexible. And so when they can't meet other requirements, we can tap into that. I
Fair.
strongly recommend we should not use that as the first source
Absolutely.
of funding.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm going to try asking this one more time. What was the process prior to the housing bond to use housing initiative dollars?
It would have been based upon competitive process and projects not doing it. We will be, and I've asked staff to finalize the PPM that addresses this. We finished the bond PPM, and so now we're going to finish this. But it should, in my humble opinion, unless this board tells me otherwise, there needs to be a competitive process, and that pot of money is our flexible dollars that they can't meet other requirements.
So we funded a fund of housing initiative dollars without any way for someone to use them?
They can use them. We got a mechanism to use them.
I mean, when we funded them originally.
I asked the board to just start setting aside those dollars because we started to get ARPA dollars. We started, the bond wasn't considered at the time, and these were funds that when you get ARPA dollars, they're federal dollars, and sometimes projects don't meet that criteria. But that extra pot of money gave us some flexibility to use them. But we got significant ARPA dollars. This board swept projects and put additional ARPA dollars on the table as well. So we wanted to get through those federal dollars first before we started spending local dollars.
How long, guys, has this project been shovel-ready for?
If you're defining shovel-ready based on the fact that we have full
What it is
entitlements,
currently, yeah, without adding the fourth floor.
that was in January, we received the full entitlement. We have the construction documents finished, but when we decided to go to the fourth floor, we held off on submitting them to CAP Government, who's the City of Pokey's third-party reviewer, because we didn't want to have to revise it a second time after they've already been approved.
And
So
so now you're going to revise it again and prolong once more?
more units is better for everybody. So,
Oh, agreed. You won't get an
so,
argument from me. It
but
just
we've already
becomes
put
this
the-
never-ending 15 years later, you know, and not placing the blame anywhere. But we talk all the time up here about wanting affordable housing, and then we have these, it just keeps getting prolonged. So I will respect what Commissioner Bernard wants and make you guys be the guinea pig, but I do apologize because you're going to have to find all the errors for us so we can perfect our ordinances. So
just to be clear, we're actually completely happy to move forward with any process you have. It's just sometimes as you're dredging through these processes to actually make something become reality, that path forward is not always clear, or it's ever moving. Interest rates change, construction prices change, something else changes. You're constantly having to try to, okay, well, this doesn't fit this criteria, I got to move over this one. And that's where it starts getting difficult. So as long as the staff does exactly what they've always been doing and trying to be creative and help us out, which they have, and they've been great, and the board finally sees this project for what it is and helps us to continue to be creative to find ways to get forward, we're happy to follow whatever process you guys deem necessary.
and you guys have been amazing, so thank you.
We're on the 1 yard line. We're almost there.
Thank you
Not
guys
the
again. I know it's
Super Bowl.
lunchtime. I appreciate the time you guys have given us, and I know this was kind of breaking protocol not to be on your agenda, so thank you.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm about to ask for a workshop on this, but a couple of questions. We have, where do I start? I'm getting hungry too. Do we happen to know with the current RFP that's coming out, that's expected March 7th, and I think there were 2 dates, right? March 14th, is that? Do we have any idea how many projects we're expecting to bid?
We don't know how many projects we're going to receive, but I know, for instance, when we did the workforce multifamily public meeting, we had 50 different people request copies of the RFP. Now, again, it doesn't mean everyone's going to submit, and we had somewhere close to that. I don't know the exact number with regards to the affordable housing multifamily. So we expect a number of projects to come in. It's just we don't know the exact number.
And this particular bid that's going out, this is solely for housing bond money? The $200 million bond that was just passed by the voters. Okay. So this separate fund, the Housing Initiative Trust, right now, do we have a procedure for allocating funds out of that fund?
Our process is to evaluate proposals that come in through some sort of competitive process. So we can look at debt service coverage, AMI, how many units are being set aside, cost per unit being constructed, something
Have we
that
put
can
out an
evaluate it.
RFP on that?
Not an RFP, but we evaluate RFPs that come in and RFPs that don't meet the criteria, or projects that don't meet the criteria of existing RFPs, then we can compare to that. We've been very fortunate because, for instance, with the ARPA that I mentioned, every project submitted was awarded. We didn't need to go to another funding source. And so now we're looking at that because we understand that the bond criteria isn't a criteria approved by the voters, approved by the board. So we have to think a little bit outside of the box for those projects that won't meet that criteria.
Okay, so I guess what I would be asking for then is a way to kind of let me and us know how many different programs or funds are there to put towards housing. And I know that because we have federal, state, we have our money that we put in. Just, is there some sort of a way to kind of gauge where the money comes from, what the restrictions are, because each of these comes with different parameters on how we can spend this money. And then also kind of would give us and the public maybe a better idea on where they fall and which of these funds they could actually get money from. So when we're doing an RFP, it maybe streamlines that process a little bit, because I think there's a number, and some funds that maybe we don't even know about that have money sitting there. We have ARPA funds and ad valorem, there's a number, you know more than I do, but just so that we would have a better understanding of how much money there is, the different restrictions that are on there, how we can allocate that money, the RFP, any of that, just, some more. But there are good projects out there, and it's hard for you to navigate. It's also hard for us to kind of digest because it's a whole department that does this. But I think, I don't know if I'm asking for a workshop or
No,
just a
not at all.
presentation or something just to give us that type of information.
Maybe you could provide all of us with that information. Jonathan, because I think that with the federal and state, and I know that some of our Congress people have contacted us and said that there's money that is available in grants. I know that that's a little big project, but you probably already have that information. If you could just go ahead and send it to all of us, I think that would be good in lieu of a workshop on that issue. But if not, we're always open to it. And I think, Commissioner Woodward, that would give us all an opportunity to know what's out there so that this project that you're bringing maybe can replicate in other areas as well. Would that be okay, Commissioner Woodward? Okay, very good. Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. So you, just to get a timeline, you were approved for 3 stories by Pahokee.
Yes, ma'am.
But you have to go back to them to get approved for 4. Now, they'd be foolish to not do it, but I'm just saying, we are always about processes, and there is a process in place for the approval. So when do you expect that to occur?
Well, actually, it's funny. While we were sitting here waiting, the city manager contacted me when you guys were talking about another agenda item. The only thing we're waiting for is for him to schedule an appointment so we can sit down and go through that process. If you're asking me process from the time to start the application to the time to complete it, usually it's 3 to 4 months, give or take, for their zoning process.
So that's not our process, that's Pahokee's process.
That's Pahokee's process.
Okay. So when they fill out the RFP, if they're filling it out for 4 stories without having the approvals in place, how does that impact them?
Good question, Commissioner. So it's definitely looked at, it's evaluated. What we would do in this particular case, since they're having conversations with the city, is we'd look for some sort of commitment, conditional commitment, something that we can tie back to the RFP, because ultimately we need to make sure the financing matches the number of units. So we would ask for something from the city. And now that we're aware that the 4th story is a process, because we didn't find this out till yesterday, we can share that information with them.
Okay, so we, the county, are not holding the process up at all. Okay, I want some clarity on that, because, we do have dollars available, but we need to be, I hate to say this, but we need to be transparent in how we give out our dollars. And so we need to be able to account for everything, and we can't, if something is incomplete, then it is not deemed responsive. So I want it to be as complete as possible with as much information as possible so that going forward, it is not deemed unresponsive. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As when the housing bond comes back, I'd love for, when staff presents us the paperwork in terms of all the different types of dollars that we do have, if that presentation could be made in public to us at that time, that'll make it easier for us as we're making these decisions. And then finally, Danya, it's great to see you here. I've got a lot of great folks from Pahokee, but you're one of my favorites, so thanks for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think, too, by providing us with that information, that will give us the sufficient information to know what we can do with these funds. I just want to ask one thing. I looked at your plans. I didn't see 2 things. One, I saw no recreation areas for the kids. I'm sure that you will put them in. I'm sure there will be some kind of recreation for the kids, because this is multifamily. And second, I'm sure that there will be a daycare center for the babies. I'm sure there will. You can put them in because you're doing retail across the street, and that's wonderful. But our kids need some place to go play, and there's nothing better than having them right around that area there. So I'm sure that will be included in the final when you come back. So,
It is, and it will now.
I know. Thank you for your candor. Okay. At this point, have we concluded this item? That's good. Now, I have to, and thank you so much, all of you, for bringing the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks to Commissioner Baxter for putting them before lunch. We went quickly. So I'd like to hear from the board in terms of it's 12:32. What time? I think we're ready for a break. I think we can agree on that. We have one more item. Shall we break for lunch? And if we do, what time should we come back? And I'm open for suggestions.
I brought my lunch, so we
Bernard,
could go quick.
Commissioner Bernard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know we have the workshop at 2. You know, I know for me, I'm hoping that the presentation regarding the governmental center is not that long, but you know, I'd love, maybe we can come back in an hour.
1 o'clock? Because if we come back at 1, I have a feeling that presentation will go even quicker than if we came back at 1:30. And we have an event at 2 o'clock, a presentation that we have to be at.
Okay.
And I heard that Commissioner Woodward brought lunch for everybody, right? So would anybody object that we would come back at like 1:05? 1:05, they give us 5 minutes to be a little late. 1:05, that's good. We're recessed till 1:05. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just
Mr.
wanted to
Attorney.
remind you, you do have that regular item as well that is supposed to come back before the board today on the EBO ordinance. So would,
Very good. Okay, thank you, sir. 1:05 it is.